Chapter 1126. Unexpectedly, there was a jade strip containing the Dragon's Gate's refining techniques. This was truly a pleasant surprise. Among the jade strips, Xiaoqian was more interested in the Dragon's Gate totem and the Heaven Dragon City. He had heard of the Dragon's Gate battle armor, soldiers, and war flags before, so he was not unfamiliar with them. As for the Dragon's Gate totem and the Heaven Dragon City, this was his first time hearing about them. After thinking for a while, he handed the jade strip to Mo Chen. He knew a little about refining. But compared to Mo Chen, who had the Book of Heavenly Works, he was definitely much weaker. It was more appropriate to hand it to her. As the saying went, one should make the best use of one's talents. There was no need to keep everything to oneself. After receiving Xiaoqian's jade strip, Mo Chen checked it and felt incredibly excited. This was probably the treasure that she was the most excited about in the Dragon's Gate treasure trove. Xiaoqian opened the second brocade box and saw a mysterious black medallion. He could not tell what material it was made of. A Buddha statue was carved on the front of the medallion. This Buddha statue looked extremely strange, different from the various Buddha statues that Xiaoqian had seen before. This Buddha statue had 8 hands covering its eyes, nose, ears, mouth, navel, heart, and other parts. It looked extremely strange. Mo Chen, what is this? Xiaoqian asked Mo Chen, who was at the side. Not long ago, Mo Chen had read through the ancient Buddhist texts. She should have some knowledge of this. This is a Buddhist medallion, an ancient Buddhist sect ornament. It is similar to the Buddhist sect's heavenly beads and bracelets. However, this Buddhist medallion is even more ancient. There are many ways to make Buddhist ornaments. Mo Chen said, in Orthodox Buddhism, unless one is an esteemed monk or the head of a temple, one is not allowed to wear ornaments. There are strict rules and restrictions. Only Buddhist medallions are ornaments that do not have many restrictions. With the blessing of an esteemed monk, they can be given to junior generation disciples or people who believe in Buddhism. They can be used to seek good fortune and ward off calamity. This Buddhist medallion has the image of a masked Buddha. It is a great Buddha that is best at seeking good fortune and warding off calamity. Furthermore, this is an 8 hands masked Buddha. It is of extremely high standards. Normally, it is 2-handed. Not only can it protect the wearer's body from harm, but it can also protect the mind from temptation. Sure enough, for it to be placed in a brocade box by itself, this amulet must be quite useful. It should be the spoils of war from destroying the small thunder temple. The items in the first 2 boxes did not disappoint Xiaoqian. As for the third box, Xiaoqian could not help but look forward to it even more. He opened the mirror box and found a yellowed ancient book inside. It was extremely old. Xiaoqian flipped it open and skimmed through it. The content recorded inside shocked him. It was actually a detailed method of how Buddhism absorbed the power of faith and how to cast a Buddha statue. There were many rituals of the ancient Buddhist sects that allowed the Buddha statue to receive the prayers of the believers and how to repay the prayers. This ancient book should have come from the Minor Layin Temple, the immortal Holy Land from 10,000 years ago. The content was very detailed, and there was everything that one could think of. The only thing missing was how to convert the power of faith into cultivation. However, that did not matter. Xiaoqian did not need to use this to cultivate. In his opinion, such a shortcut was not something that one could cultivate on their own. No matter how high one's cultivation was, it was just a paper tiger. What made Xiaoqian happy was that with this mysterious veil of the Buddhist sects, it was no longer mysterious to him. It would be easy to find the other party's weakness. What is it? Why are you so happy reading it? Mo Chen asked, finding it strange when she saw Xiaoqian's expression. Xiaoqian smiled and handed it over. Take a look at this. Mo Chen received it and took a few glances. Then, she exclaimed in pleasant surprise, "This is great. I found a lot of information in the ancient books, but there were only some vague fragments. Now, we do not have to worry about the secret of Black Flame Island. Right. After we go out, we will destroy this fake Buddhist sect. It swindles people and acts like bandits. Furthermore, it pretends to be benevolent. It is too much of a threat to Heavenly Star Island. Mo Chen looked at the divine blood formation and asked, however, what do you intend to do with this King's spirit vein? Unless we invite a peak expert like the Thunder King or a Haotian Prime, it will be too difficult to take away the King's spirit vein silently. Xiao Chen frowned and thought hard. For now, he did not know what to do. Xiao Chen did not want to refine this entire King's spirit vein. With his current cultivation, he was far from being able to consume a King's spirit vein. If he did so, he would only explode. At the very least, he would have to reach the level of Emperor Wu before he could consume a King's spirit vein. Xiao Chen wanted to use the King's spirit vein's pure spiritual energy and vast quantity to break through his small perfection blue-robed Emperor level. After that, he could use Holy Spirit veins to continue cultivating as long as they were of high quality. However, right now, the King's spirit vein was completely sealed. Once Xiao Chen broke the formation, the mysterious phenomenon of the King's spirit vein appearing would be a huge problem. If he went back and forth to find the Thunder King and the Haotian Prime, he would spend a lot of time. The gains would not make up for the losses. There was no way to touch this spirit vein. He could see it but not obtain it. Hee. You are really an idiot. Don't you see that there is a prayer mat in this secret room? This secret room is filled with treasures. Don't you find it strange that a prayer mat suddenly appeared? Just as Xiao Chen was preparing to go out and brainstorm for a solution, Ao Jiao's voice suddenly came from the immortal spirit ring. She mentioned something that Xiao Chen and Mo Chen had overlooked. That's right. Why is there a prayer mat out of nowhere? Xiao Chen's eyes lit up. Why is there a prayer mat out of nowhere? Xiao Chen's eyes lit up. Then, Xiao Chen remembered that there was a secret realm in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion in the lower realm. The prayer mats there were connected to a spirit vein. Thank you, little Ao Jiao. Xiao Chen could not help laughing in his heart. It turned out that the problem that plagued him was so simple. At the crucial moment, Ao Jiao performed a great service. When Xiao Chen arrived before the prayer mat, he said to Mo Chen, there is no need to rush to leave. This prayer mat might be connected to a King's spirit vein. I should be able to use it to break through the bottleneck of the small perfection blue-robed emperor. Mo Chen felt somewhat surprised. She asked, your bottleneck requires a King's spirit vein to break through? Yes. The purity of a Holy Spirit vein is not high enough. The chances of using it to break through the bottleneck and form the heavenly seal are too low. Xiao Chen sat cross-legged on the prayer mat. After he answered, he closed his eyes. Xiao Chen calmed himself and slowly circulated the purple thunder divine incantation. The instant he circulated his cultivation technique, the sound of a torrential flood rang out in Xiao Chen's ears. That was an auditory hallucination caused by the vast amount of spiritual energy. As the purple thunder divine incantation drew in the spiritual energy, it looked like roaring dragons pouring into Xiao Chen's meridians, looking extremely horrifying. If Xiao Chen was not careful, his meridians might burst. The golden divine blood formation started to give off a faint light. The 9-colored clump of light flickered endlessly. However, not a single strand of spiritual energy leaked out. Mo Chen, who was standing at the side, heaved a sigh of relief as she held the secret manual in the third brocade box. However, there was still some worry on her face. A King's spirit vein could only be used by Xiao Chen to break through the bottleneck of the great perfection blue-robed emperor. How difficult would it be for Xiao Chen to advance to martial emperor? There were still 4 more years. That was simply too short. Mo Chen sighed in her heart. Then, she glanced at Xiao Chen and quietly moved to the side to read quietly. While Xiao Chen was breaking through the bottleneck, he did not know that Heavenly Star Island had already reached its most dangerous moment. Originally, the Dragon's Gate's heaven-locking formation could last for 3 days. However, after Zhuang Zhenghe rushed over and smashed down with the Amitabha Buddha's palm strike, the situation instantly reversed. The defenses of the 7 outpost islets were completely destroyed. The Heavenly Star Island cultivators had no choice but to shrink the defensive perimeter of the formation to its limits and retreat to Heavenly Star City to put up a final resistance. Layers of Buddhist lights spread across the vast Heavenly Star Island sky, covering the entire 500 kilometers of the sea region around Heavenly Star Island. The sound of chanting rang out in every temple, lingering and inspiring the hearts of the people. To the many cultivators defending Heavenly Star City, the tranquil and peaceful chanting of scriptures sounded like demonic music, filling them with despair. Originally, after the Dragon's Gate's heaven-locking formation activated, the Heavenly Star Island cultivators were evenly matched. A partially restored Dragon's Gate's heaven-locking formation was not something that the 8 factions could break. Furthermore, there was still Lan Xiaobai's group, leading 8 king-grade warships. When they charged out, they held back the many people of the 8 factions. The 8 factions could not focus on breaking the formation. The defensive formations of the 7 outpost islets linked together. 7 ancient azure-colored dragon images guarded one area, forming an impregnable defensive perimeter. This rendered the 8 factions helpless. They could only rage out of humiliation as they watched Lan Xiaobai's group enter and leave, destroying their sage-grade warships one by one. However, at this crucial moment, a resonant Buddhist voice rang out. Before Heavenly Star Island's side could understand what was going on, a golden Buddha hand descended from the sky, flickering with a dazzling light. A golden Buddha's hand, flickering with a dazzling light, fell from the sky and smashed heavily on the defensive barrier. The Amitabha Buddha image appeared in the 10,000 layers of Buddha rings. With one palm strike, it shattered the defensive barrier, ripping it with cracks. A significant amount of horrifying energy leaked in through the cracks. Then, it swept through the surroundings like a strong wind, easily destroying the buildings on the outpost islets like they were nothing more than piles of rubble. It could be said that the wind passed without leaving a trace. The place was in a sorry state, looking like rubble. Although the defensive barrier quickly mended, Lan Xiaobai's expression changed drastically. In the end, he decisively chose to retreat, shrinking the defensive perimeter and retreating to Heavenly Star City. On the other side, the 8 factions, who were originally in a predicament, immediately gained momentum. They gave chase and attacked ferociously, working together with the huge Buddha image hovering in the air. As the pursuit continued, a significant amount of energy penetrated the defensive barrier and killed several people of Heavenly Star Island's group. After the barrier shrank by 100 times, its defenses became significantly stronger. The group that retreated to Heavenly Star Island finally stabilized the situation. However, good times did not last. Resonant chanting rang out on the nearby islands of Heavenly Star Island. Bathed in a Buddhist light, the Amitabha Buddha image's strength increased explosively. Every now and then, it would throw a palm strike. The huge palm covered the sky. When it descended, it blocked the boundless sunlight in the sky, shrouding the entire Heavenly Star City in darkness, making everyone anxious. As the 7 blue dragon images circling Heavenly Star City clashed with each other, their bodies grew increasingly illusory. Clearly, they were on the verge of collapsing. The wind howled on the city walls. When Lan Xiaobai saw the 7 blue dragon images descend once more, he frowned heavily. There were only 7 blue dragon locking the sky. It was still too weak. If he could completely repair the formation, with the momentum of 1,000 dragons soaring, even Emperor Wu would have to retreat. Then, he would be able to advance or retreat as he pleased. He would not have to wait for death like now. Chapter 1127. City Lord, why is the Blue Dragon King not coming out yet? The streets and alleys, the broken pavilions, and the cracks in the city walls were everywhere. The enemy's attacks intensified each time, announcing a heartless fact: the city was about to fall. An outer sect elder could not help asking about Xiao Chen. Lan Xiaobai smiled bitterly to himself as he glanced at this person. He remembered that this was the Grand Master-level martial sage that Kim Taeho had first hired from the Black Sea. This person had been on Heavenly Star Island for more than a year already and could be considered a veteran. After this person spoke, the group of outer sect elders all looked at Lan Xiaobai. Never mind. You all can go. I left some black astral coins and 2 copies of profound martial techniques in the city lord's residence. After you obtain them, you can leave through the underground passageway. These outer sect elders had already done their best to last until now. After all, compared to Heavenly Star Island, these old men were only consecrated. It was already pretty good that they did not turn against Xiao Chen when they saw that the city was about to fall. Hence, they parted on good terms. Now that the situation was already over, there was no need to drag this group of people down with them. When the old man who asked the question heard this, he immediately felt that something was wrong. Something must have happened to the Blue Dragon King, Xiao Chen. He probably would not be able to rush back quickly. City Lord, you are overthinking. This old man has watched Heavenly Star Island develop step by step. Although my feelings for Heavenly Star Island are not like those of the inner sect elders and the City Lord, I am willing to defend it to the last moment. Before this city falls, this old man will not take half a step out of Heavenly Star Island. That's right. If this city doesn't fall, we will not leave. To Lan Xiaobai's surprise, the group of outer sect elders did not choose to leave immediately. Instead, they all chose to defend to the last moment. At that time, it would be difficult for them to escape. Lan Xiaobai's expression changed slightly. He smiled and said, "In that case, many thanks to everyone. I hope that everyone will hold fast to your posts. If the other party's cultivators charge in through the cracks in the barrier, I will have to trouble everyone." Although most of the Buddha statues' attacks were blocked by the 7 ancient blue dragon images, a small portion of their attacks still hit the barrier. Many cultivators of the 8 factions would take advantage of the crack in the barrier before it mended to charge in. They wanted to attack the root of the problem and destroy the core of the Dragon's Gate's Heavenlock formation. If that happened, Stellar Sky City would fall into the enemy's hands in an instant. Lu Ku, Jin Lin, and the others were guarding the core of the formation, unable to leave. As for the city walls, they needed a large number of people to be the first line of defense. For this group of outer sect elders to say such words, Lan Xiaobai couldn't help but be moved. Whoosh! Lan Xiaobai's figure flashed, and he arrived at a slightly quieter place on the city walls. Elder Qin was circulating his energy to treat Yu Chenxi's injuries there, not stopping for even a moment. "Chenxi, how is she?" Lan Xiaobai asked anxiously, regret flashing in his eyes. Elder Qin did not stop what he was doing. He sighed and said, "Her situation is more or less stable. There is no danger to her life. However, the rebound from her martial technique injured her heart vessels, and her meridians ruptured. Without medicine to heal her meridians, she will probably become an ordinary person." When Lan Xiaobai heard this, he clenched his fists tightly, revealing the veins on the back of his hands. Hatred surged in his eyes. No matter how much Lan Xiaobai hated Fu Lianyun, who had shamelessly injured Yu Chenxi, had a wide smile on his face at this moment. Flattery filled his ears. On the Metal Blood warship, when Zhuang Zhenghe heard about Fu Lianyun's magnificent feat, he could not help smiling. "Little brother Fu, good job. After we break into Heavenly Star City, I can let you choose a treasure first." Fu Lianyun felt extremely flattered. He quickly said, I dare not, I dare not." Brother Zhuang contributed the most. If not for Brother Zhuang rushing over to activate the Amitabha Buddha image, the situation would not be like this. At this moment, the people of the other 8 factions also saw the wind and changed their direction. After seeing the might of the Amitabha Buddha image, they felt a deep fear of Zhuang Zhenghe. After all sorts of flattery, they bombarded Zhuang Zhenghe with compliments. However, the Blue Dragon King, Xiao Chen, seems to have not appeared from the start. I wonder where he went. He probably has something to do. Otherwise, he would not have not appeared until now. Fortunately, he is not here. Otherwise, Heavenly Star Island would not be so easy to break into. Seeing that Heavenly Star City was about to fall, the leaders of the 8 factions felt very relaxed. They chatted without any reservations. Humph. Just at this moment, the group heard a cold snort. Zhuang Zhenghe said unhappily, even if Xiao Qin comes, this old man can easily kill him. Seeing Zhuang Zhenghe's expression change, the others immediately stopped talking, not daring to say anything more. Putting aside the Amitabha Buddha image, Zhuang Zhenghe's aura had already reached an unimaginable level. Before him, the other small perfection blue-robed emperors could not help but feel fear. It was not that they had not seen Zhuang Zhenghe before. However, the feeling that Zhuang Zhenghe gave them today was very different. His aura was terrifyingly strong. These blue-robed emperors did not know why. When they saw Zhuang Zhenghe get angry, they all kept quiet out of fear. The Metal Blood sect master, Qin Ming, changed the topic. The city looks like it is about to fall. Everyone, please make your preparations. The group quickly looked over and saw that the 7 azure dragon images circling outside Heavenly Star City had already turned into azure light that filled the sky and rained down. Everyone in the city looked at the green speck of light with despair on their faces. Everyone knew that without the protection of the 7 blue dragons, the barrier of Heavenly Star City would not be able to withstand a palm strike from the Amitabha Buddha image. Lan Xiaobai bowed slightly. Then, he faced the many outer sect elders who fought to the end and said, "This time, Lan Xiaobai thanks everyone. Let's go." Suddenly, an outer sect elder pointed to the back and exclaimed in pleasant surprise, "City Lord, look." Lan Xiaobai turned his head and saw a familiar white figure rushing over at lightning speed. Boom! The Amitabha Buddha image's huge hand descended, shrouding the entire Heavenly Star City in darkness. The pitch-black world made everyone in the city feel suffocated with fear and despair, feeling a deep sense of helplessness. Before Lan Xiaobai could clearly see that figure's face, this palm strike shattered the final defensive barrier of the Dragon's Gate's heaven-locking formation. A strong Buddhist might surged over, and the entire city wall instantly crumbled, crumbling completely. All the buildings of various sizes in the city crumbled under this horrifying might. Heavenly Star City, which had taken close to 2 years of effort, was destroyed in an instant. It looked like this palm strike would crush everyone to death or injure them. Suddenly, an unyielding dragon roar resounded in the sky. The dragon's voice reverberated as it roared out, completely suppressing the chanting of scriptures that had not stopped throughout the entire time. The sound waves spread out in all directions, kicking up waves on the surface of the sea. They layered over each other, surging endlessly. With this roar, the Buddha statues worshipped in several of the temples on Heavenly Star Island's subsidiary islands all shattered. A saber light flashed in the pitch-black space, chopping off the Buddha image's palm down the middle. A ray of sunlight shone through the crack. The light was holy and solemn. Under the illumination, a white figure hovered in the air while holding a saber. One man and one saber broke this huge palm filled with Buddhist might. This ray of light seemed to freeze the entire scene, making it hard to forget. After an instant, the huge palm vanished, and sunlight illuminated the land. Heavenly Star City regained its light. The cultivators fighting in the city all clearly saw that figure. If it was not the Blue Dragon King, Xiao Qin, who else could it be? It's over. The Blue Dragon King is back. When the people of the 8 factions on the Metal Blood warship that had already arrived at Heavenly Star Island saw this scene, they could not help exclaiming. Who could have expected that Xiao Qin, who had not appeared all this while, would appear at this crucial moment? Furthermore, the moment Xiao Qin appeared, he chopped off the palm strike that rivaled a peak consummation blue-robed emperor's attack. How could they not feel fear? Zhuang Zhenghe shouted coldly and angrily, "What are you all panicking for? I am not even afraid. What are you all afraid of?" Chen Ming knew that the leaders of the other factions still had some value, so he consoled them at an appropriate time. Don't exaggerate his strength. He just used a trick, using a sound wave to break the Buddhist sound. That is how he managed to barely block it, reducing the might of the palm strike significantly. Given Brother Zhuang's strength, it is more than enough to deal with him. Furthermore, the Amitabha Buddha image is not that easy to break. Zhuang Zhenghe said, "That's right. Just help me block those small fries later. There is no need for you to worry about the rest. Fu Yangyun and the others calmed down. At this moment, there was no turning back. They could only fight to the death. After chopping off the Amitabha Buddha image with one saber strike and sending it into the clouds, Xiaoqin did not take advantage of the situation to give chase. Xiaoqin looked around at the ruined Heavenly Star City and quickly landed beside Lan Xiaobai. When Lan Xiaobai saw Xiaoqin land, a guilty expression flashed on his face. He said, "Sorry, I still failed to defend this city." Xiaoqin patted Lan Xiaobai's shoulder and said, "Don't say that. I'm the one apologizing to you. You did your best and did very well." "Chenxi, what happened to her?" Xiaoqian's gaze shifted to Yu Chenxi, who was being guarded by Elder Qin. His face sank as he asked immediately. Lan Xiaobai quickly recounted the events that transpired. After Xiaoqin finished, he suddenly discovered that the surrounding air suddenly turned bone-chilling, a bone-chilling killing intent that made him tremble involuntarily. When Xiaoqin came out of the Dragon's Gate treasure trove, he sensed the extraordinary atmosphere of Heavenly Star Island, so he rushed over before Mo Chen did. What a despicable and shameless old fogey. Even when Xiaoqin saw the ruined Heavenly Star City, he still managed to control his killing intent. When Xiaoqin heard Lan Xiaobai's description, he could no longer control his killing intent. Lan Xiaobai was still fine. After all, he had the cultivation of the blue-robed emperor and was an outstanding talent. This killing intent could not injure Xiaoqin. However, those outer sect elders did not have it easy. Whoosh! Mo Chen, who was slightly slower than Xiaoqin, arrived. When she saw Xiaoqian's state, she immediately said anxiously, "Big brother Xiao, you injured them." Chapter 11:28. Xiaoqin startled to his senses. Lan Xiaobai and the many outer sect cultivators standing on the rubble of the city walls all heaved a sigh of relief. "I startled everyone," Xiaoqin said, feeling some self-blame. His mental state was still not perfect enough. One could not be without anger. One could have killing intent as well. However, killing intent had to be controlled. Otherwise, as one grew stronger and stood higher, one might fall into the demonic Tao at any moment. When the many outer sect elders saw Xiaoqian's sincere apology, they all said that he did not need to take it to heart and that they understood. At the same time, they felt somewhat surprised. The famous Blue Dragon King did not put on any airs. However, when they thought about it, that was not right. Earlier, when Xiaoqin was bathed in light, he gave off an aura that was no weaker than that of some famous major characters. He was a person filled with contradictions, unfathomable. Xiaoqin thought of something and asked, "Mo Chen, are the king-grade medicinal pills in the Dragon's Gate treasure trove useful for mending meridians?" "There are 3, and they are all of peak quality. After mending them, the toughness of the meridians can increase by another level." Mo Chen was the one who collected the treasures in the secret room. She was rather familiar with them, so she immediately mentioned them. Xiaoqian's anxious emotions eased slightly. He looked at the sky. The Amitabha Buddha image, which had been temporarily knocked back by the Buddhist light, had already retreated into the light. However, Xiaoqin knew that the Amitabha Buddha image, which possessed the power of faith, would recover from that minor injury in no time. Withdrawing his gaze, Xiaoqin looked at Mo Chen. Just as he was about to speak, Mo Chen smiled softly and said, "I know what you want. You want to take this opportunity to uproot all the factions on Black Flame Island, completely ending this calamity." After experiencing life and death in the Cloud Sea domain, the two had worked very well together during their trip to the Dragon's Gate treasure trove. Mo Chen said everything she wanted to say, saving Xiaoqin a lot of explaining. He looked at her and said, "Be careful." Mo Chen smiled faintly and left calmly. Her target was Zhuangzhenghe's lair, Black Flame Island. When Xiaoqin broke through to Great Perfection Blue-Robed Emperor, Mo Chen had found a weakness in the Minor Lane Temple's secret manual for gathering the power of faith. The weakness was in the Enlightened Sense Temple, which Chen had been to before. That was the source of the other party's power of faith. Then, he would use the method in the secret manual to return the power of faith, and this insufferably powerful Amitabha Buddha would immediately become a rootless duckweed. Given Mo Chen's strength, as long as she was careful and did not enter the palace hall, she should be able to kill all the enemies on Black Flame Island while Zhuang Zhenghe and the Amitabha Buddha statue left. Benefactor Xiao, Chen, we meet again. Benefactor Xiao, we meet, said, of Chen. Chen, SS to say, we meet again of Chen will. Benefactor Xiao, we meet again. Zhuang Zhenghe looked at Xiao Chen with a smile. No one could sense any murderous intent. If not for Xiao Chen having a deep understanding of Zhuang Zhenghe, he might have been fooled by this smiling Buddha. The group of outer sect elders on the city walls acted as if they were facing a great enemy. They quickly gathered behind Xiao Chen and watched anxiously as the 8 blue-robed emperors and Zhuang Zhenghe pressed in. You should be clearer than anyone else on how strong the Amitabha Buddha is. If you are smart, quickly scram and return to your Kunlun continent. Otherwise, this ruined city before you will be your grave. Zhuang Zhenghe maintained a smile on his face. However, even a fool could make out the murderous intent in his words. Xiao Chen could not be bothered with Zhuang Zhenghe. He swept his gaze across the various blue-robed emperors and asked indifferently, who is Fu Yanyan? Xiao Chen's indifferent words made the hearts of the leaders of the 8 factions sink for some reason. When they looked over, the murderous intent in Xiao Chen's eyes seemed to pour into their bodies, giving them a chill. From the changes in their expressions, Xiao Chen managed to find Fu Yanyan in one breath. Very good. You can die now. Zhuang Zhenghe was stunned. He quickly moved to the side, trying to block Xiao Chen. However, who knew, Xiao Chen did not choose to charge over. He only leaped up, and his body seemed to vanish into thin air. When he landed, the lunar shadow saber's scabbard was already stabbed into Fu Yanyan's chest. No matter how Fu Yanyan struggled, it was useless. The others were greatly startled. They had not expected Xiao Chen to be so bold, daring to jump into their encirclement alone. You are seeking death. The Metal Blood Sect's sect master, Qin Ming, was the first to react. He led his people to surround Xiao Chen, moving as fast as lightning. Whoosh! 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 The sound of 7 or 8 figures tearing through the air was ear-piercing. At such a close distance, they would need only half a second to land their attacks on Xiao Chen. Even a consummation blue-robed emperor would be severely injured after receiving the attacks of so many blue-robed emperors. In the time it took for a spark to fly, Xiao Chen showed no intention of dodging. Holding the scabbard, he stabbed Fu Yanyan into the ground, leaving no chance of survival. Following Fu Yanyan's miserable cry, blood spurted out of his wound like a fountain, blooming like a flower. At this moment, Xiao Chen unleashed the vast aura of the great perfection blue-robed emperor without holding anything back. The people charging over all revealed shocked expressions as they felt a vast aura. They only felt a huge aura that felt solid and surged out in all directions, blowing them away. Caught off guard, even Zhuang Zhenghe could not block it. He had to take 100 steps back before he could stabilize himself. Zhuang Zhenghe glanced back and saw the sorry state of the crowd. Then, he stood up and drew his scabbard. Xiao Chen gently drifted away and somersaulted to the ground. He said indifferently, "Sorry, I do not like to be disturbed when I am killing people." The dying Fu Yanyan on the ground pressed his hands on his wound. His face was filled with horror and helplessness. Fu Yanyan did his best to raise his head and look at Zhuang Zhenghe with some hope. He did his best to say, "Save me." However, no one cared about him at this moment. The group of small perfection blue-robed emperors gathered behind Zhuang Zhenghe. They all looked at Xiao Chen warily. No one noticed his gaze. No one had expected Xiao Chen to break through to the great perfection blue-robed emperor realm. His aura was like a mountain, completely surpassing theirs. Even the great perfection blue-robed emperor Zhuang Zhenghe and the Metal Blood Sect's Qin Ming could not compare to Xiao Chen in terms of aura. Zhuang Zhenghe did not say a word. He squinted as though he wanted to see through Xiao Chen. However, he could not figure out Xiao Chen's strength at all. Chen Ming sent a voice projection to Xiao Chen and drew his saber. Then, he pushed off the ground and charged at Xiao Chen. The other 6 small perfection blue-robed emperors all drew their weapons and charged over, radiating killing chi. At this point, they knew that there was no way out. Even if they begged for mercy, there would not be a good result. They could only fight and defeat Xiao Chen. Only then could they survive. Xiao Chen waved his hand, indicating that Lan Xiaobai and the others did not need to make a move. He took a step forward and blocked Chen Ming's saber strike without drawing it. After reaching the blue-robed emperor realm, every move could stir up the wind and clouds. In 2 or 3 breaths, he could change his moves dozens of times. Dang! 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 The 7 worked together to block Xiao Chen's horrifying aura. They surrounded Xiao Chen and attacked him. Saber lights and sword images flashed, and sparks flew everywhere. They kicked up strong winds and stirred up the clouds. Because of the surging power of the world, the scene in the surroundings looked like a geomancy painting flashing by the group of people. Xiao Chen's figure leaped around, fighting 1 against 7. Without drawing his saber, he formed an impenetrable defense, blocking the attacks of the 7. Of the 7 people before him, aside from Chen Ming, who was slightly difficult to deal with. As for the other 6, as long as they drew their sabers, Xiao Chen could take them down in an instant. However, there was still Zhuang Zhenghe, who was eyeing Xiao Chen like a tiger, storing up power and waiting to make a move. Once he figured out Xiao Chen's strength, he would make a swift move. This time, when Xiao Chen saw Zhuang Zhenghe, he could clearly feel that Zhuang Zhenghe's strength had improved compared to a month ago. Logically speaking, this was an abnormal improvement. Even if one could use the power of faith to convert it into cultivation, it would be impossible for one to improve so quickly. There was only one possibility. After thinking about the ritual recorded in the secret canon, Xiao Chen had a vague guess. He would not think about it for now. He would play with this group of people. Either he would not make a move, or he would take down Zhuang Zhenghe when he did. After Chen Ming's attack failed, he was forced back by Xiao Chen again. Then, he immediately launched a frantic counterattack, provoking Xiao Chen. Blue Dragon King, you are really boundlessly arrogant. Do you really think that you can take down the 6 of us without even drawing your saber? As Chen Ming spoke, the other 6 small perfection blue-robed emperor made their moves. All sorts of killing moves flashed with multicolored lights, bringing with them all sorts of mysterious phenomena. They surged towards Xiao Chen like an erupting mountain flood, their auras startling. Xiao Chen did not answer. His eyes were like lightning, clearly seeing the trajectories of the 6 attacks. The lunar shadow saber in his hand seemed to come to life. It was like a third arm, nimbly moving around his palm and the back of his arm. Bang! Bang! Metallic sounds rang out, sounding like thunder. Xiao Chen still did not draw his saber. As he retreated, he blocked all the moves of the 6. It was like there was an unbreakable, formless wall in front of Xiao Chen. As long as he wanted to, not even a strand of wind would be able to penetrate it. The first spurt of vigor would weaken, and the third would be exhausted. The principles of the art of war in Xiao Chen's hometown were the same in the world of cultivators. Under Xiao Chen's exquisite defense, Chen Ming's group attacked for a long time but could not take him down. Initially, they were like ferocious tigers. Now, they were completely sluggish. Their moves were full of openings. Zhuang Zhenghe felt frustrated. Even now, he still could not figure out Xiao Chen's strength. He cursed this group of people in his heart. They were all trash. Xiao Chen, you are called the Blue Dragon King in vain. You are being beaten until you cannot even retaliate. Chen Ming knew about Zhuang Zhenghe's arrangements. When he saw that he still could not force Xiao Chen to draw his saber, he tried to provoke him again. Very good. The other party's mental state is already in chaos. His aura is weakening. It is time to end this farce. As you wish. Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes, and a cold light flickered in them. His gaze was like a saber, boundlessly sharp. With just a single glance, the six of them felt a chill run down their spines. As his long hair fluttered, boundless saber hums came from Xiao Chen's body. At this moment, his body was like a saber, his hair was like a saber, his clothes were like a saber, and his gaze was like a saber. Xiao Chen, who had been passively defending, suddenly started running. His clothes were as white as snow, and his figure was as fast as the wind. In the wind and snow, he quickly charged at the seven. Chapter 1129. Dang! 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 Saber hums reverberated in the air, sounding like the most beautiful zither music in the world. Xiao Chen dodged Chen Ming's saber and closed in, not giving him a chance to react. Then, he slammed his shoulder into Chen Ming's body. A horrifying saber wound appeared on Chen Ming's chest. He vomited a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, severely injured, no longer able to fight. It was fine if Xiao Chen did not make a move. However, once he did, Xiao Chen would not give this group of people any chance. Xiao Chen waved his long sleeves, and the saber arm of a person charging at Xiao Chen from the left was chopped off by a saber light. However, the saber in Xiao Chen's right hand clearly did not leave its scabbard. Xiao Chen did not stop running. With every step he took, boundless saber lights flickered. Everywhere Xiao Chen went, saber lights flashed endlessly, mysterious phenomena appeared, and wind and snow danced. No one could stop Xiao Chen. With every step he took, someone went flying and vomited blood, no longer able to fight. After Xiao Chen took 7 steps, 7 people fell to the ground, unable to get up. They lay there moaning in pain. Those with light injuries had broken limbs, and those with heavy injuries had fainted from the pain. When Xiao Chen attacked, he did not show any mercy. Without stopping, Xiao Chen's figure flashed and arrived before the stunned Zhuang Zhenghe. At this moment, Xiao Chen defeated 7 people. His aura had reached its peak. When he moved, it felt like the entire world moved with him. Zhuang Zhenghe, who had been waiting for Xiao Chen to draw his saber, wanting to find some openings and deal a lightning-quick blow to Xiao Chen, was caught off guard. This aura sent him flying. However, Zhuang Zhenghe's cultivation was extremely horrifying, even stronger than the newly advanced Great Perfection blue-robed Emperor Xiao Chen. Zhuang Zhenghe's face sank as he stomped heavily on the ground. The ground trembled, and a scarlet Bodhi tree took root behind him. Rings of scarlet Buddhist light appeared behind him. Buddhist chanting resounded, and the Bodhi tree moved without any wind. Many scarlet Bodhi flowers floated out. Boundless power of faith gathered, and one could vaguely hear horrifying cries. Those were the aggrieved spirits in hell. Zhuang Zhenghe stretched out his palm and wanted to throw a palm strike, wanting to knock down Xiao Chen's aura. However, how could Xiao Chen, who was in his peak state, give him such an opportunity? The instant he landed, Xiao Chen drew his lunar shadow saber, which he had not drawn yet. A saber hum resounded throughout the world. The resplendent saber light made the world pale in comparison. Spring flowers, winter snow, summer, autumn wind, blue dragon breaking the sea, the bright moon soaring. The boundless mysterious phenomena materialized a boundless glory in that instant. Then, the saber light solidified into a vast painting. The scarlet Bodhi tree instantly crumbled. This saber strike sent Zhuang Zhenghe flying back 1 kilometer. The Buddhist light scattered, and he was in a sorry state. The wound on his chest nearly cut him in half at the waist. In just 7 steps and 1 blade, this group of people had been heavily injured by Xiao Chen's thunderous momentum. As Xiao Chen watched Zhuang Zhenghe fly back in a sorry state, he did not relax his guard. The Amitabha Buddha image hidden in the clouds was the greatest threat to the entire Heavenly Star Island. After such a long time, it should have already recovered from Xiao Chen's saber strike. After all, it was just an injury to the palm, not a major one. If Xiao Chen was willing to expend the power of faith, it could recover in a moment. However, for some reason, Zhuang Zhenghe did not bring out the Buddha image. Even after he killed the leaders of the 8 factions until they could not put up a fight, he did not bring it out. Perhaps in Zhuang Zhenghe's eyes, these factions were just pawns. Their lives had nothing to do with him. However, Zhuang Zhenghe had been severely injured by Xiao Chen's saber strike. If he still did not bring out the Amitabha Buddha image, he would be killed by Xiao Chen. Even if he did not want to come out, he had no choice but to do so. Xiao Chen held up his saber and stood upright. He did not give chase, just waited quietly. The heavenly seal in Xiao Chen's dantian was already completely formed. It looked like a blue dragon. As it breathed, strands of formless heavenly laws appeared behind Xiao Chen. There was a total of 10,000 of them, surging in all directions like a great river. Before reaching Emperor Wu's level, one could not even form a circle with their heavenly laws. One would not be able to use the power of the world as they pleased. Now, Xiao Chen had reached great perfection blue-robed emperor. All the accumulations that he had laid before advancing to blue-robed emperor erupted out now. With a thought from 10,000 heavenly laws, they could drive the power of the world. How horrifying was that? It could break mountains and rivers, shatter the sky. Every action of Xiao Chen's contained an invisible aura that suppressed cultivators of the same cultivation realm. One look from him could make his opponent tremble in fear. It had been a long time since Zhuang Zhenghe advanced to great perfection blue-robed emperor. Now, he used the ritual to strengthen himself further. Zhuang Zhenghe's cultivation was clearly much higher than Xiao Chen's. However, the quantity and quality of his heavenly laws, as well as his aura, were far inferior to Xiao Chen's. This was the gap that came from accumulations and accumulations. The further one went, the more obvious this gap would become. When one reached Emperor Wu's level, it would be clear who was superior. Whoosh! As Xiao Chen watched, a Buddhist light suddenly shot down from the sky and fixed Zhuang Zhenghe in place. Then, the Buddhist light started to treat his injuries. The horrifying saber wound on Zhuang Zhenghe's chest healed at a visible pace amid the Buddhist light. After suffering a saber strike, Zhuang Zhenghe did not show any anger on his face. After he clearly saw Xiao Chen's strength, he laughed maniacally. Zhuang Zhenghe walked over step by step in the air. Then, he said coldly, "Xiao Chen, is this your strength? If this is all you have, you will find it hard to escape death today." The Buddha has a merciful heart. However, when the Buddha gets angry, no one can stop him. A Buddhist voice resounded, and the Amitabha Buddha image that terrified Heavenly Star Island's group broke through the clouds and reappeared. As the golden light descended, every corner of the ruined stellar sky city was illuminated by the Buddha light. Right after Zhuang Zhenghe spoke, the Amitabha Buddha image struck out with another palm strike. The palm covered the sky. If this palm strike landed, everyone in the rubble of Heavenly Star City would be injured. I absolutely cannot let this palm strike land. I absolutely cannot let the many fellow cultivators of Heavenly Star Island get injured. Xiao Chen roared ferociously and executed the dragon tone art. He materialized the blue dragon battle armor as he held the lunar shadow saber and soared into the sky, clashing ferociously with the palm strike. Boom! A resplendent saber light flew out and chopped the palm in half again. However, this time, the Buddha did not retreat. Instead, it sent out another palm strike, carrying the weight of heaven and earth. When this palm strike descended, the entire sky seemed to be pressed down. Die! Zhuang Zhenghe already had a good grasp of Xiao Chen's strength. Right now, Xiao Chen was already unrivaled among the great perfection blue-robed emperors. However, he was still no match for a consummation blue-robed emperor. Zhuang Zhenghe could not execute the dragon tone art continuously. As for the Amitabha Buddha image, as long as Zhuang Zhenghe continuously exhausted the power of faith, it would be sufficient to grind the other party to death. When this palm strike landed, it would severely injure Xiao Chen. However, just as this palm strike was about to strike Xiao Chen, an ancient Buddha image appeared behind Xiao Chen. It had 8 arms, protecting Xiao Chen's chest, navel, and other vital areas. The Buddha image was not as huge as the Amitabha Buddha image. It only had an ancient aura that was reserved and peaceful, filled with benevolence. The palm protecting Xiao Chen's chest swung back and forcefully smacked the Amitabha Buddha image's palm back. When the two Buddha images clashed, the entire sky started to tremble intensely like the sea. Waves surged, shattering the boundless clouds. Bang! 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 The Amitabha Buddha image exhausted the power of faith. As it bathed in the Buddhist light, it recovered its right hand. When the palm strike landed, it was once again smacked back by the palm protecting Xiao Chen. This repeated 8 times, exhausting a boundless amount of power of faith. However, the Amitabha Buddha image's 8 attacks did not succeed even once. Instead, after exhausting the power of faith, the Buddhist light encasing the surroundings dimmed significantly. The originally resonant Buddhist sound became like the buzzing of a mosquito, not showing any might at all. Zhuang Zhenghe appeared extremely shocked. His eyes even appeared somewhat dazed. This is the Buddhist sect's holy item, the 8-armed Buddhist pendant. How did it end up in your hands? Xiao Chen did not answer Zhuang Zhenghe. He knew that this was the best opportunity to make a move. Whether he could successfully kill the Amitabha Buddha image or not would depend on this saber strike. Otherwise, by the time the other party recovered, the Buddhist pendant would have already used up all 8 chances. At that time, he would be in big trouble. Xiao Chen pushed off the air and swung his saber. 18 blue dragons circled him and roared together. The dragon roars shook the sky and scattered the remaining Buddhist sound. This was Xiao Chen's strongest saber technique, subduing dragon profound slash. As the saber light flew out, a towering saber light chopped at the Amitabha Buddha image, seeking to kill it in one strike. If you want to kill it in one strike, you have to get past me first. When Zhuang Zhenghe saw the situation, he cursed angrily and leaped up, wanting to block this saber light for the Amitabha Buddha image. As long as the Amitabha Buddha image remained, he could recover from his injuries, no matter how severe. When Lan Xiaobai, Jin Lin, and the others saw this scene, their expressions changed. They all knew that they absolutely could not let Zhuang Zhenghe succeed at this crucial moment. Otherwise, when the Buddha image recovered, no one would have a good ending. All of them soared into the air and used their strongest killing moves to charge at Zhuang Zhenghe. As long as he dared to continue advancing, the attacks of the many profound martial techniques would kill him on the spot. Damn it! Zhuang Zhenghe cursed and stopped moving. Then, he sent out a palm strike to face the attacks of Lan Xiaobai and the others. 2 loud rumbles resounded at the same time. Zhuang Zhenghe attacked with his full power, sweeping through the surroundings. Lan Xiaobai and the others were all knocked back. However, on the other side, Xiao Chen chopped the Amitabha Buddha image in half. All the Buddhist light vanished in an instant, and the annoying Buddhist chanting vanished as well. Bang! Xiao Chen descended amid the boundless saber lights and hacked at Zhuang Zhenghe repeatedly. After 100 moves, he knocked Zhuang Zhenghe into the air with one kick. Before Zhuang Zhenghe could get back up, Xiao Chen's figure flashed, and he landed. Then, he placed the lunar shadow saber on Zhuang Zhenghe's neck. Zhuang Zhenghe coughed and vomited a large mouthful of blood. Then, he smiled with a somewhat sinister expression. You cannot kill me. My dermic incarnation is on Black Flame Island. As long as my dermic incarnation is not destroyed, I do not care about this body of mine. Lan Xiaobai and the others came over. When they heard this, they could not help but feel shocked. They had managed to restrain this person after much difficulty. In the end, they still could not do anything to him. That was simply too unreasonable. Xiao Chen, is that so? The others asked anxiously. Xiao Chen nodded and said, that's right. However, he will soon not be able to laugh anymore. Zhuang Zhenghe laughed maniacally and said, how can I not be able to laugh anymore? I will self-detonate now, and you will all die with me. When I make a comeback, Heavenly Star Island will still be mine. After saying that, Zhuang Zhenghe's body swelled up like a balloon. The blood vessels on his skin were clearly visible. Horrifying energy brewed in his body. Chapter 1130. When the others saw the situation, they quickly scattered. The horrifying energy from the self-detonation of a great perfection martial sage was not something they could endure. Shao Qin did not retreat. Based on his calculations, Mo Qin should be almost done with Black Flame Island. Zhuang Zhenghe's dermic incarnation would not last much longer. Even if Mo Qin did not deal with him, Shao Qin could not retreat. He had to block most of the force when she self-destructed. He could not let the other cultivators of Heavenly Star Island come to harm. Shao Qian's physical body had already reached the peak of a sage body. Furthermore, he had the Blue Dragon body nourishing Art's Blue Dragon battle armor. He would not suffer much damage from Zhuang Zhenghe's self-detonation. Suddenly, horror appeared on the crazed Zhuang Zhenghe's face. He quickly stopped self-detonating in a fluster, his body deflating like a balloon. Not only did he stop self-destructing, but his cultivation also dropped from the Great Perfection Blue-Robed Emperor to the Small Perfection Blue-Robed Emperor. It kept dropping until it reached the peak Great Grandmaster. You broke my source of faith. How is that possible? How did you know the weakness of the power of faith? Zhuang Zhenghe looked at Shao Qin, his face filled with disbelief. How could Shao Qin know such a secret? Shao Qin pressed the tip of his saber against the other party's neck. His eyes remained calm as he said indifferently, "You don't have to worry about how I know. Tell me honestly how you obtained the Buddhist inheritance, and I'll give you a quick death." Zhuang Zhenghe, who wanted to say something, suddenly stopped breathing. His eyes turned lifeless, and his heart stopped beating. He died just like that. Shao Qian's expression changed, and he bent down to check. The other party's body was still warm, and there were no obvious injuries. His meridians, heart, and lungs were all intact, and there were no signs of suicide. This was the appearance of a spirit being destroyed. The spirit left in this body had been forcibly erased by someone. Shao Qin raised his head and looked at Black Flame Island. Something must have happened there. Shao Qin, what should we do with these people? Lan Xiaobai sent people to bring the leaders of the 8 major forces to Shao Qin. Among the leaders of the 8 factions, other than Fu Yinyun, who was gravely injured and on the brink of death, the others suffered light injuries, only losing the ability to fight. For the Blue-Robed Emperor, as long as it was not a fatal injury, he would be able to recover. Hearing Lan Xiaobai's words, a group of people looked at Shao Qin. Other than the Iron Blood Clan's clan leader Qin Ming, everyone else started begging for mercy. Blue Dragon King, we were reckless this time. We are willing to compensate for the losses of Blue Dragon City. That's right, we're willing to give up all of our family's assets, as long as you let us live. There was a glimmer of hope in Fu Yinyun's eyes. She said weakly, Blue Dragon King, please let us go. I, Fu Yinyun, promise you that from now on, I will bring my family far away from home and be an ordinary person. Family? Shao Qin let out a soft sound of surprise and said indifferently, I'm afraid you don't have any family. What do you mean? Shao Qin, you can't be that ruthless. There is justice in the world. Family should not be implicated. Don't tell me you can't even abide by this rule. Be careful of the older generation. If they can't stand it, they might take action against you. Hearing this, the expressions of the group changed greatly. They became agitated and roared with ferocious expressions. That's right. In this world where the strong preyed on the weak, there were no saints. There was no reason. Whoever had the bigger fist was the truth. This was especially so in the chaotic Western Sea. However, most people had a bottom line. Not implicating family was an unwritten rule. As long as one was not an evil cultivator or a demon, they would not do such a heartless thing. Although Shao Qin sentenced these people to death in his heart, he did not intend to touch their families. He looked around and fixed his gaze on Qin Ming. He said calmly, don't overthink. I was not the one who did it. Sect Master Qin should be clear on what happened. Qin Ming, what's going on? Our family is really all dead. The others asked Qin Ming anxiously as they looked at him. When Qin Ming heard their questions, he laughed loudly and said, that's right. Your family is indeed dead, including the ordinary people on the island. They all died in Zhuang Zhenghe's purification ceremony. Don't blame anyone. If you want to blame something, blame yourselves for being greedy. The winner becomes king, and the loser becomes a bandit. From the day you stepped onto the path of cultivation, you should have understood this. I, Qin Ming, was also greedy. I believed that Zhuang Zhenghe had some way to advance to martial emperor. I was extremely naive. There are no shortcuts on the path to martial emperor. Blue Dragon King, I will be leaving first. I will wait for you 4 years from now. Ha 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 ha. As the Metal Blood Sect's clan leader laughed maniacally, Qin Ming vomited a mouthful of blood. He had broken his own heart veins and died of a shattered heart. The other people of the 8 factions turned ashen. They could not accept this fact as they muttered to themselves. This was especially so for Fu Lianyun. When he thought about his initial actions, he found them laughable. Fu Lianyun had disgraced himself and risked his life. Behind him, Zhuang Zhenghe hunted down his family. What could be more lamentable than this? The more Fu Lianyun thought about it, the more stifled he felt. Fu Lianyun, who was already on the verge of death, could no longer hold on. He fell over, his life force severed, and he stopped breathing. Looking at the leaders of the other factions, Xiaoqin did not feel any sympathy. He said indifferently, "Kill them." The group of small perfection blue-robed emperor cultivators suppressed by Qin Ming raised his saber, and blood spurted out. The few small perfection blue-robed emperors who invaded Heavenly Star Island and reduced Heavenly Star City to rubble, killing many cultivators, all died. The path to martial emperor was paved with blood and corpses. If I do not kill today, someone will definitely kill me tomorrow, injure my friends, and destroy my family. The heart of an emperor does not allow one to hesitate or panic. One must be decisive in killing. Xiaoqin stood side by side with Lan Xiaobai, looking at the rubble of Heavenly Star City. The two chatted softly, their eyes filled with pity. Heavenly Star City had just been established, and it already faced such a calamity. Furthermore, this was before the Dragon's Gate's mountain tablet was erected. If they erected the Dragon's Gate's signboard and announced it to the world, who knew what kind of waves it would cause? As the cold wind howled, Xiaoqin seemed to see a scene of the future. Killing and blood flowed endlessly. A city of iron and blood stood amid the flames of war until the end, no one dared to invade it. As Xiaoqin looked at Lan Xiaobai, who stood shoulder to shoulder with him, he felt very moved. Back then, in the Haotian sect, when Shui Lingling told Xiaoqin that Lan Xiaobai and the other two wanted to follow him, Xiaoqin could not believe it. He was sure that Lan Xiaobai was just playing around. Lan Xiaobai was an outstanding talent of the Azura race, an ancient race. His status was no lower than that of the Holy Scions. How could he be willing to follow a person with an unpredictable future? A long journey tests a horse's stamina, and time reveals a person's heart. The saying of his hometown could be said to be the best example when applied to Lan Xiaobai. At this point, there was no longer any need to prove whether Lan Xiaobai was sincere or not. Xiaobai, get the people below to come out. The matter at Black Flame Island should be resolved already, Xiaoqin said when he sensed Mo Chen's figure flying over at an extremely fast speed. The vast and complicated tunnels under Heavenly Star City were personally built by Lord Jiu. He had already rendered meritorious service countless times. If not for Lord Jiu's tunnels, who knew how many ordinary people would have died under the Amitabha Buddha's palm strike? Lan Xiaobai nodded and quickly made arrangements. Then, he took his leave. Whoosh! Mo Chen landed beside Xiaoqin. Fatigue appeared in her eyes. However, Xiaoqin heaved a sigh of relief. Mo Chen was not severely injured. The matter at Black Flame Island is resolved. The Enlightened Sense Temple is already destroyed. I killed all of Zhuang Zhenghe's subordinates in the city. The rest all fled. Mo Chen explained the matter at Black Flame Island. Xiaoqin nodded and said, however, something happened to Zhuang Zhenghe's dermic incarnation, right? Shock flashed in Mo Chen's eyes. She asked, how did you know? There was actually a Buddha head hidden in the Enlightened Sense Temple. At the last moment, it swallowed up Zhuang Zhenghe's dermic incarnation. I do not know whether it is dead or alive. Buddha head? A strange light flashed in Xiao Chen's eyes. He thought of something, and his heart skipped a beat. That's right. It is a Buddha head. It is a lone Buddha head without a body. It looks very ancient. Even though it's very weak now, I couldn't stop it and let it escape. Xiao Chen cared a lot about Buddha heads. The moment he heard about Buddha heads, he thought of the headless Kittagarbha Bodhisattva in the 9 layers of purgatory. There was also the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva's frightening specter. He would often roam the Yellow Springs Road, searching for his head. No one dared to look back. If his guess was right, and this head was really the head that the Ksittagarbha Bodhisattva king was searching for, then it would be a little scary. The Kittagarbha Bodhisattva, who had been beheaded by the Qing Emperor 10,000 years ago, was still alive. Furthermore, he had found a successor and was starting to stir up trouble. Just thinking about it was a headache. In particular, he was inextricably linked to the Qing Emperor. The cause of the past was the effect of the present. The cycle of cause and effect had never been broken. Now that Xiao Chen thought about it, Zhuang Zhenghe's choice of Heavenly Star Island to spread his religion was not intentional. Fortunately, this Buddha head was still very weak right now. Since Mo Chen could deal with it, there was no need to worry too much for now. However, the future was hard to say. Furthermore, this was just Xiao Chen's guess. It might not be the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva's head. Big Brother Xiao, what's wrong? Do you know something about the origins of this Buddha head? Mo Chen asked out of curiosity. Xiao Chen collected his thoughts and nodded. I know a little. However, I will have to personally make a trip there to find out the specifics. Let's not care about it for now. Right now, this place is giving me a headache. Mo Chen looked at the Heavenly Star City residents coming out of the underground tunnels amid the rubble. She agreed with Xiao Chen. The great battle had turned their homes into rubble, making them homeless. Some of them even had relatives and children who were cultivators who lost their lives in the battle. It was a tragedy. There were more than 2 million residents in Heavenly Star City. Stabilizing so many people in one go was not a simple matter. Xiao Chen would be very busy for a long time in the future. Big Brother Xiao, I would like to build Heaven Dragon City on these rubble, Mo Chen said after looking for a long time. Then, she made a bold suggestion. Xiao Chen felt excited. Since the city was destroyed, he had to build a new one. Taking this opportunity to build Heaven Dragon City was indeed a good opportunity. Chapter 1131. Furthermore, once Heaven Dragon City was established, it would not be so easy to destroy. Even without the protective formations, Emperor Wu would not be able to destroy Heaven Dragon City so easily. However, the construction of Heaven Dragon City was a vast undertaking. When Xiao Chen took a quick glance at it, he was deeply impressed. Not to mention the resources needed to establish a city, the formations, restrictions, astrology, geomancy, and the layout of the city were not something that just anyone could handle. There needed to be a person proficient in all aspects to be able to direct this project. Xiao Chen asked himself if he had the ability to do so. That's not right. Isn't there a girl in front of me who is proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting? Mo Chen smiled faintly and said, if Big Brother Xiao is determined to let me use the resources in the Dragon's Gate's treasure trove, I can give Big Brother Xiao a rough map of Heaven Dragon City within half a month. A rough map requires half a month? Yes. That is still a conservative estimate. The complexity of Heaven Dragon City is the highest among all the cities that I have seen. If it is completed, it will be comparable to Bright Moon City, not too far off. Xiao Chen was somewhat surprised. How could Heaven Dragon City be inferior to Bright Moon City after it was completed? The Lunar Palace's reputation was much weaker than the Dragon's Gates back then. This was something that he could not accept. Mo Chen explained, this is very normal. After Bright Moon City was built, it had accumulated for 10,000 years. Furthermore, once Heaven Dragon City is completed, it will be comparable to these 10,000-year-old ancient cities. Since ancient times, it is the only one of its kind. Alright, I'll trouble you then. However, now that these refugees have no home to go to, how should we settle them? Seeing that Xiaochen trusted her so much, handing over the resources of the Dragon's Gate's treasure trove to her after asking a few questions, Chen felt very happy. She smiled and explained, everyone has their own specialties. Big brother Xiao, there is no need to worry. Lan Xiaobai and I will handle the rest. You just broke through to great perfection, blue-robed emperor. Time is precious. You need to comprehend more. Your strength is the foundation for how far Heavenly Star Island can go in the end. Xiaochen was touched. The most difficult thing to find in life was a confidant. What is a bosom friend? A bosom friend is someone who understands me. Without a doubt, Chen is such a bosom friend. Thank you. He didn't know what else to say. Everything was contained in these two words. Under the veil, Chen smiled and said, there is no need for thanks between us. Back then, if you had not made a move in the Cloud Sea domain, it goes without saying what would have happened to me. If there's anyone thanking me, it should be me thanking you. Xiaochen was not someone who cared about trifles. He smiled and said, let's go. Accompany me to Black Flame Island. I would like to see the hiding place of that Buddha head as soon as possible. Chen nodded lightly. Xiaochen summoned out the Flood Dragon War Chariot and carried the two through the clouds, heading for Black Flame Island at lightning speed. In the clouds, Xiaochen was in the war chariot. He opened the curtains, and his sharp gaze pierced through. He could vaguely see many battleships hidden in the surroundings. They were extremely careful. However, these battleships did not release any malicious intent. This was especially so when they saw the Flood Dragon War Chariot. They all fled far away. Chen also noticed these battleships. She said, these are the major factions around Heavenly Star Island. They are all from the 9 ranks of the great families. Emperor Wu is overseeing them. It looks like they are paying a lot of attention to this battle. Xiaochen withdrew his gaze, not feeling surprised. Heavenly Star Island's foundation was there. It was a juicy piece of meat. It was impossible for these factions not to be tempted. Even if they did not dare to make a move because of the Bushin Palace and the Thunder King's name, as a new faction, they still had to pay attention to this battle. After this battle, at the very least, the Blue Dragon King's fame would spread far and wide, enough to shock everyone. This would let these major factions know that even if the 3 holy masters did not care about Xiaochen, Heavenly Star Island was not that easy to bully. If they wanted to scheme against the Blue Dragon King, they would have to consider whether they could withstand the rage of the Blue Dragon King. 15 minutes later, the Dragon War Chariot arrived at the sea region near Black Flame Island. When Xiaochen came out of the war chariot, he was immediately shocked by the scene before him. He saw a 9-colored light soaring into the sky from the direction of the Enlightened Sense Temple on Black Flame Island. Colorful clouds filled the sky, and golden rain covered the entire island, pattering endlessly. Black Flame Island, which was originally known for being hot and desolate, was now peaceful. Plants flourished, and hundreds of flowers bloomed. It was thriving and full of life. The ordinary people bathed in the rain all revealed excited expressions. They knelt on the ground and chanted, "Merciful Buddha." The rainwater seeped into their bones, blood, and marrow. Everyone could clearly feel their bodies feel refreshed and rejuvenated. The illnesses that had tormented them for so long vanished. All sorts of wondrous effects made them feel extremely comfortable. Xiaochen thought to himself, this is retribution. All the vast power of faith that Zhuang Zhenghe absorbed over the past year or so was returned to him. After today, Zhuang Zhenghe's foundation here would completely crumble. Chen stood beside Xiaochen. Having seen this scene before, she appeared rather calm. She said, actually, the ancient Buddhist teachings are not bad in the first place. They talk about karma and reincarnation, doing good deeds and accumulating virtue. Good deeds will be rewarded, and evil deeds will be punished. These are all very good teachings. Even when collecting the power of faith, they are sincere in preaching. There is no such thing as converting people, much less those evil rituals. The believers worship and make offerings, and the bodhisattvas and Buddhas listen to their prayers and send down blessings. This is a very good cycle, a good thing for ordinary people. Shaoqin nodded in agreement. The secret canon of the small Layin temple had records of this as well. However, the human heart was unfathomable. There were too many temptations. Even a Buddha would find it hard to remain calm when faced with such vast power. Shaoqin asked himself, if an ordinary person faced such a shortcut, he would find it hard to control himself. He would definitely use the power of faith to strengthen himself. Slowly, he would change his mind and convert people. Then, he would preach in a barbaric manner, slowly falling into the abyss. Shaoqin believed that there were benevolent Buddhas and bodhisattvas. However, it was hard to say if it was the headless Buddha behind Zhuangzhenghe. Come, let's go to the Enlightened Sense Temple Hall and take a look. Shaoqian's figure flashed as he flew towards the Enlightened Sense Temple Hall. Whether it was the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva's head or not, he had to search for it personally. As Shaoqin flew, he saw all the temples and statues of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas shattering. The temples were also empty. Not only could the abbot not be seen, but the young novice monks had also fled. The believers on the island were enjoying a feast. However, to the long-term beneficiaries of the power of faith, it was a disaster. The source of faith was destroyed, and the vast power of faith that had accumulated poured out without restraint. Furthermore, the backbone of the temple was killed. This seemingly huge, fake Buddhist sect collapsed in an instant. When Shaoqin landed in the Enlightened Sense Temple, the situation was even more dismal. The originally vast and glorious temple had collapsed. The arhats and bodhisattva statues had all collapsed and shattered. Everywhere Shaoqin looked was a scene of ruin. Life flourished everywhere on the island. However, this place, the source of the Buddhist light, was deathly silent and gloomy. The flowers and grass were withered, and the trees were withered. Compared to the magnificent scene that Shaoqin saw the last time he came here, it was like heaven and earth. When Shaoqin arrived before the Enlightened Sense Temple Hall, the originally mysterious and unfathomable hall that Shaoqin did not dare to enter no longer had any mysterious aura. The entire roof of the hall had been blown away. This must have been caused by the shock waves from the battle between Mo Chen and the abbot. The nine-colored Buddhist light came from the cracks in the rubble and shot out into the clouds. Shaoqin threw a palm strike and swept away all the rubble. A strong palm wind picked up the rubble and flew away. A large hole appeared in the empty space in front. The source of the Buddhist light was in there. Mo Chen, did you go down there? Shaoqin asked as he looked at the large hole where the Buddhist light came from. Mo Chen shook her head and replied, I did not have time to go down. At that time, the Buddha head flew out from there. Its mental energy injured me. Then, I was busy killing some of the backbones. After I was done, I was afraid that you would worry, so I rushed back. Understanding this, Shaoqin immediately jumped down. Mo Chen leaped up and followed Shaoqin. The entrance of the cave was very deep, much deeper than what the two of them had imagined. The two of them descended for a full quarter of an hour before they stepped on a patch of black water and found themselves in a vast cave. When the two looked ahead, they saw a headless Buddha at the end of the cavern. The Buddhist light that filled the air came from this headless Buddha. Shaoqin felt startled. This headless Buddha was clearly the same as the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva's headless body that he saw in the 9 layers of purgatory. Suddenly, Shaoqin understood. That Buddha head was indeed the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva's Buddha head. The Kittagarbha Bodhisattva wanted to use the power of faith to reconstruct the Buddha body. After that, the two would merge and truly revive. However, it did not look like it would be that easy. Although the headless Buddha before Shaoqin looked the same as the one in the 9 layers of purgatory, the might and pressure that the two gave off were completely different. However, the might and pressure from the two were completely different. The headless Buddha before Shaoqin did not feel threatened at all. However, the Buddha in the 9 layers of purgatory was simply horrifying. Before the headless Buddha, Shaoqin shrank infinitely, unable to resist at all. What is this? Mo Chen asked with an unsightly expression as she looked at the black water on the ground. Shaoqin recovered his wits and said, "This is the sea of bitterness, the prayers of the many believers. Birth, old age, sickness, and death are all in these prayers. However, the Bodhisattva here does not care at all. It draws out all the prayers in the power of faith, forming this vast sea of bitterness." Mo Chen looked at Shaoqian's expression and said, "Big brother Shao, you seem to recognize this headless Buddha." "Yes. I once saw the original form of this headless Buddha in the 9 layers of purgatory." Before Mo Chen, Shaoqin did not hide anything. He told her everything he saw and heard. When Mo Chen heard that, she found it strange. She asked, "Since it has its own body, why did it not go to the 9 layers of purgatory and reattach it?" Shaoqin thought of that horrifying saber light. Even after 10,000 years, it could still bring color back to the Yellow Springs realm. He said, "That's impossible." The Qing Emperor left a wound on its neck. I estimate that even after 10,000 years, the saber intent still has not scattered. Reattaching it would be like sending oneself to death. Is the Qing Emperor really so strong that his saber intent does not scatter after 10,000 years? Clearly, Mo Chen was somewhat shocked. A saber intent that did not scatter after 10,000 years could still be so mighty. Chapter 1132. Shaoqin nodded and said, "If you saw the Qing Emperor's saber light, you would not be so shocked." Mo Chen entered deep thought. She watched as the 9-colored Buddhist light slowly scattered the headless Buddha's body, making it look even more withered. She asked, "What should we do with this headless Buddha now?" Shaoqin paused for a moment before replying, "Let it destroy itself. When the power of faith runs out, it will disappear naturally." After saying that, Shaoqin prepared to leave. Just at this moment, something strange happened. A figure of light quickly descended from the cave entrance. Shaoqian's eyes were sharp. He clearly saw that it was a Buddha head. Shaoqian's expression changed slightly. However, he did not panic. He placed his right hand on his saber hilt and instantly shielded Mo Chen. The Buddha head hovered in the air, giving off an ancient aura. Its large eyes stared at Shaoqian as if it wanted to see through all of Shaoqian's secrets. The Buddha head spoke in a hoarse voice, "It is indeed you, the fellow with the bloodline of the Qing Emperor." Shaoqian did not reply to it. He instantly drew the lunar shadow saber, and a resplendent saber light illuminated the dark cave. Then, he charged at the Buddha head at lightning speed. Shaoqian was already certain that this evil Buddha was not a kind person. It was clearly not on good terms with him, so there was no need to hold back. Dang! Just as the saber light was about to strike the Buddha head, the headless Buddha body suddenly moved. It opened its hand and blocked Shaoqian's saber light. Whoosh! Whoosh! The saber light did not stop, and the movement did not stop. Shaoqian attacked with his full power, sending out 9 saber strikes and chopping the Buddha body, blocking the Buddha head into pieces. The Buddhist light that soared into the clouds stopped. The spiritual rain that covered the entire island also stopped. Unfortunately, this is not the immortal epoch. Otherwise, I would be able to kill someone like you with just one word. Live on properly. When you undergo your great tribulation of wind and fire, I will return the saber strike that the Qing Emperor gave me to you. The Kittagarbha Bodhisattva's Buddha head spoke in a somewhat cold voice. Then, it turned into a beam of light and quickly flew away. Shaoqian naturally didn't want to let him go so easily. Putting aside the fact that the other party was a ticking time bomb, as long as she had a real body, she would be a great threat to him. Just based on the fact that Shi possessed numerous secrets of the ancient Buddha dimension and some secrets of the Qing Emperor, he shouldn't be allowed to leave no matter what. However, the other party had clearly come prepared. After confirming Shaoqian's identity, they left using a secret technique, not leaving any traces for Shaoqian to track them down. Shaoqin chased out of the cave and found that there was no trace of the Buddha head. There was no trace of it at all, only some faint fluctuations in the space. Did you fail to catch up? Mo-chan asked after flying out of the cave. Shaoqin sighed. He used a secret technique to break space. Without becoming Emperor Wu, there is no way to catch up to him. Mo-chan consoled, there is no need to rush. It is clear that the Qing Emperor severely injured his essence 10,000 years ago. Now, he is just a stray dog. Even an ancient bodhisattva would not be a threat to you. Indeed, Shaoqin was not in a rush. However, he felt that the other party should know some secrets of the Qing Emperor back then. If he could capture and interrogate the other party, he might gain a lot. Probably even the old item spirit in the Blue Dragon Palace did not know why the Qing Emperor went to the 6 paths of reincarnation back then. Only this fellow knew a little. However, this happened to be what Shaoqin cared about the most. Suddenly, the mysterious Buddha head appeared on a desolate island. It opened its mouth and spat out a weak beam of light. If one looked carefully, one would discover that the weak light was actually a small person giving off a Buddhist light. If one's eyes were sharp enough, one would immediately discover that this small person was the bloody monk, Zhuangzhenghe. Master, you have seen it already. When can my physical body recover? Zhuangzhenghe asked quickly with some anxiousness in his voice. The Buddha head said coldly, it is just an ordinary physical body. You can recover it at any time. It is just a small matter, yet you are so flustered. No wonder you cannot accomplish anything great. Zhuangzhenghe clearly feared this mysterious Buddha head. He nodded in a hurry and said, Master is right. Where should we go now? It was not easy for us to develop our foundation on Black Flame Island. If it gets destroyed, it would be too much of a pity. The Kitagarbha Bodhisattva's Buddha head said indifferently, it is just a small island. You have not seen it before. You have not seen the horrifying scene of billions of believers worshipping together during the golden age of Buddhism. This bit of foundation is nothing. However, a strange light flashed in the Kitagarbha Bodhisattva's eyes. He seemed to have thought of something as he said, I forgot. This place is an abandoned land. How could it recover to its golden age? I still have to kill the Blue Dragon King and leave this place with his luck. Only then can I return to the Buddhist sect and seek veneration from the Buddha. Master, where are we leaving? Zhuangzhenghe asked out of curiosity, feeling confused. Don't ask what you should not ask. The Buddha head snorted coldly. Suddenly, 4 or 5 cultivators arrived on the island. The Buddha's attention immediately shifted. Scarlet Bodhi leaves appeared in the Buddha's eyes, materializing an ancient Buddhist temple in the depths of his eyes. Then, he opened his mouth and sucked in. Clumps of green light appeared on the foreheads of the 4 or 5 inferior grade martial sages. As they struggled, they were sucked into the Buddha's mouth. Then, their physical bodies fell to the ground. Go and choose one. You only have one chance to undergo dermic reincarnation. This is also your last chance. When Zhuangzhenghe heard this, he rejoiced and quickly flew over. The Buddha head opened its mouth and chanted scriptures. Ancient Buddhist scriptures came from the Buddha's mouth. Amid a Buddhist light, a corpse on the ground slowly stood up. While Zhuangzhenghe was undergoing the dermic reincarnation ritual, Shaoqin and Mo-chan were strolling around Black Flame Island. Strictly speaking, it could not be considered strolling around. After Zhuangzhenghe's group left, Heavenly Star Island would definitely take over the management of Black Flame Island. It was not a bad idea to inspect the island's situation in advance. Big Brother Shao, this Black Flame Island hides a peak Black Flame Earth Flame. It is the best place to build a refining pavilion. I would like to move all my clansmen here and transform it into a peak refining pavilion. Shaoqin had heard of this before. Previously, because of the 7 heroes of the dragon and other reasons, the Mo clan's clansmen had been living on a desolate island outside Heavenly Star Island Sea region. Only a small portion of them remained on Heavenly Star Island. Now that all the hostile factions near Heavenly Star Island had been cleared out, there would be no obstacles for the Mo clan to come in. Furthermore, the Mo clan was a refining clan in the first place. In the past, they were famous in the Cloud Sea domain. They had many refining masters in the clan, and they even had refining techniques passed down by their ancestors. As long as they had sufficient resources and a peak location, it would not be difficult to build a refining pavilion that was not inferior to a Holy Land's. Xiao Qin appeared somewhat distracted as he thought of something even further in the future. He thought of his clansmen in the distant Sky Dome realm. Never mind. Thinking about it now is still too far away. The clansmen of the Qing Emperor's descendants returning to the Kunlun realm would be much more complicated than the Mo clans. There would also be more unpredictable factors. It would be better to wait for the Heaven Dragon City to be completed before going to the lower realm and fetching the Shao clan up, returning them to where they belonged in the first place. Otherwise, without any guarantee of safety, Xiao Qin would find it hard to rest assured. No matter how worried he was in the Sky Dome realm, Emperor Wu could not go there. With the Haotian sect's branch and the mysterious Great Qin nation's royal court guarding that place, it would be safer than the Kunlun realm. Big brother Xiao, what's wrong? Mo Chen asked out of concern when she saw Xiao Chen's distracted expression, like he was thinking of something else. Xiao Chen recovered his wits and smiled. It's fine. Can the transportation formation on our Heavenly Star Island send us to the lower realm? Mo Chen said, it can. The Bushin Palace has a transportation formation in the lower realm as well. However, such a transportation formation requires a lot of resources. I understand. Xiao Qin understood. Resources were not a problem. If he wanted to go to the Sky Dome realm in the future, it would be much more convenient. After chatting for a while longer, the two rode the dragon chariot back. After saying goodbye, Xiao Qin returned to the summit to comprehend the many benefits of advancing to great perfection blue-robed emperor. Mo Chen assisted Lan Xiaobai in sorting out the refugees in the original Heavenly Star City. She also had the many resources in the Dragon's Gate treasure trove. Xiao Qin and Lan Xiaobai would also be in charge of judging contributions and distributing rewards. Xiao Qin was very clear on the principle of not doubting the people he used. This way, he could relax and also ease the pressure on others. 7 days later, Xiao Qin and Elder Qin sat at the summit, drinking tea and discussing the Tao, exchanging their experiences in the martial Tao. In terms of experience, Elder Qin had stopped at Great Perfection Blue-Robed Emperor for several decades. Indeed, Xiao Qin could learn many things. The Great Perfection Blue-Robed Emperor can be considered to have reached a higher level on the path of forging the Emperor's Bridge. With the Heavenly Seal, it is much easier to use the heavenly laws. Compared to the small Perfection Blue-Robed Emperor, there is a vast difference. Of course, you are an exception, Elder Qin said with a somewhat helpless smile as he took a sip of tea. Breaking before establishing. Before advancing to the blue-robed emperor, you accumulated 10,000 heavenly sage laws. Since ancient times, I really cannot think of anyone with such a horrifying cultivation. This also gives you the capital to kill opponents of higher cultivation. After sighing, Elder Qin continued, to think that I spent 100 years in the blue-robed emperor realm. Now, I have only 3,000 heavenly laws, not even a third of it. Xiao Qin put down his teacup and smiled. Elder Qin is being too humble. Old Qin's heavenly laws are much denser than mine. The power of the world that you can drive is not much weaker than mine. These words were not too humble. The other party's cultivation was still much denser than the newly advanced Great Perfection Blue-Robed Emperor. The density of heavenly laws was far inferior to Xiao Chen's. What Xiao Chen was strong in were the quantity of his heavenly laws and the purity of his purple thunder divine incantation. Elder Qin, how is it to cultivate a soul with heavenly laws? Can you explain it to this junior in detail? Xiao Chen asked humbly. Elder Qin took a sip of tea and smiled. The cultivation of the small perfection blue-robed emperor and the great perfection blue-robed emperor is very profound. However, in the end, it is still about resources. If you do not have enough resources, you can accumulate them with time. It is not too difficult and can be considered uneventful. However, in reality, 90% of the blue-robed emperors are stuck at peak great perfection blue-robed emperors, unable to advance further. This is because there is no way to cultivate a soul with heavenly laws. If nothing unexpected happens, this old man will be stuck at this stage as well. Xiaochen frowned and asked, "Is it that difficult?" Elder Qin nodded and said, "This stage has nothing to do with resources. Even if you had all the resources in the world, it would be useless. You can only rely on yourself to comprehend and explore. Cultivating a soul with the heavenly seal is simply merging your own soul into the heavenly seal and turning it into the vague form of the heart of an emperor." Chapter 1133. You should know that after you become Emperor Wu, you will reconstruct your golden body. At that time, physical injuries will no longer be able to kill Emperor Wu. As long as the heart of an emperor remains, it will be hard to sever his vitality. Now, you understand why this step is so difficult. Xiao Chen's comprehension ability was startling. Naturally, he understood immediately. Cultivating a soul from the heavenly realm already touched upon the core of Emperor Wu. This was directly related to the heart of an emperor. It would be difficult even if one did not want it to be. Elder Qin said unhurriedly, "The path to martial emperor is not simple. This step already stops 90% of the blue-robed emperors. After that, the great tribulation of wind and fire stops another 90%. It would not be too much to describe the cultivators of my Kunlun realm as billions or billions. We have no lack of geniuses. However, the number of people who can break through to Emperor Wu every 500 years can be counted on 2 hands. Every Emperor Wu, no matter how strong or weak, is in existence with astonishing luck in the Kunlun realm. Since ancient times, countless people have died on the path to martial emperor. However, there is still an unending stream of people advancing. Of the 10 billion cultivators, the number who could become Emperor Wu every 500 years could be counted on 2 hands. Xiao Qin sighed. The success of a general was built on the bones of 10,000 people. This probability could not even be described as 1 in 100 million. Furthermore, Xiao Qin had less than 4 years left. At the summit, Xiao Chen and Elder Qin chatted for a long time. They even exchanged moves. After exchanging a few moves, Elder Qin sighed. Now that the age of geniuses was in full swing, there were more demonic geniuses than the last. Xiao Chen was a demonic genius among demonic geniuses. The number of people who advanced to martial emperor in the past 100 years probably surpassed the total number of people who advanced to martial emperor in the past few thousand years. However, when it came to Xiao Chen, Elder Qin could not help showing a look of pity in his eyes. "Xiao Chen, my life is not considered long, but I have lived for several hundred years and seen countless geniuses. Many outstanding talents died prematurely due to various reasons. Some were too sharp, some were overzealous, some were arrogant, and some were too engrossed in their desires. You are the only exception." "What a pity," Elder Qin could not help saying. Xiao Chen smiled calmly and said, "If I had not ignored the consequences and tempered my physical body back then, or if I had not tempered my quintessence twice when I was a martial sage, my physical body would not have such problems now. However, if that were really the case, I would have nothing. I would not be able to defeat those outstanding talents of the Kunlun continent, and I would not be able to sweep through everyone during the king conferral ceremony, obtaining overwhelming luck. Everything in the world has its cause and effect. Nothing is certain. It's best not to think too much and look forward. It is best not to martial Emperor Wu." Xiao Chen said, "I know. Martial Emperor Wu are the emperor, martial Wu, emperor, Xiao, Wu, Chen, Wu, emperor, and Wu will not to use it, to Wu, we will. We will only be able to show off before the blue-robed emperor. Compared to the true Emperor Wu, it is not worth mentioning. I will not choose this path." Elder Qin was not surprised by Xiao Chen's answer. He smiled faintly and said, "That is all I have of the cultivation experience of the great perfection blue-robed emperor. I will not disturb your cultivation any longer. If you need anything, you can look for me at any time." Elder Qin was not surprised by Xiao Chen's answer. He smiled faintly and said, "This is all the cultivation experience I have for a great perfection quasi-emperor. I will not disturb your cultivation any longer. If you have any problems, you can look for me at any time." In the end, the cultivation of the great perfection blue-robed emperor was still a matter of accumulating resources. After reaching the peak of the great perfection blue-robed emperor, he would start cultivating the soul, merging the soul with the heavenly seal. That was the true dividing line. In the end, the cultivation of the great perfection blue-robed emperor depended on accumulating resources. When one reached the peak of the great perfection blue-robed emperor, one would start to cultivate the soul, merging the soul with the heavenly seal. That was the true dividing line. However, Xiao Chen had just reached the great perfection blue-robed emperor. He was still a long way from the peak, so he needed a vast amount of resources to cultivate. Xiao Chen had used about 1% of the king's spirit veins in the treasure trove to break through the bottleneck. Most of the rest had not been used. Logically speaking, with such a king's spirit vein, Xiao Chen did not lack resources. However, he felt that using this king's spirit vein to cultivate was too wasteful. There was no quality-price ratio. Even the holy lands and immortal holy lands that had existed for tens of thousands of years or tens of thousands of years did not have many king's spirit veins. Even if they included the spares, they would not have more than 5. It was not worth it to use this king's spirit vein on his own blue-robed emperor. As long as Xiao Chen broke through the bottleneck, he would have more than enough holy spirit veins to satisfy his needs. Xiao Chen wanted to leave this king's spirit vein for the future Dragon's Gate, to make it a capital that could rival a holy land. To find another king's spirit vein, he needed to be as strong as a sovereign martial emperor at the very least. Xiao Chen still remembered the scene of the Northern Sea Alliance turning out in full force for the sake of subduing what he suspected to be a king's spirit vein. If a king's spirit vein really appeared, the Northern Sea Alliance's sovereign martial emperor would definitely come out to prevent other factions from snatching it. I have to find a new holy spirit vein. I have nearly used up all the records on the vellum. I will have to rely on my dragon-seeking art later. A light flashed in Xiao Chen's eyes. He thought of making a trip to the Black Sea to look for Batu's day. He wanted to see if he could find some secrets of the Yuan clan from the corpse that Batu had obtained. This would allow Xiao Chen's dragon-seeking art to improve further. At that time, he would be more confident of finding a holy spirit vein. Collecting his thoughts, Xiao Chen did not think too much for now. He sat cross-legged on the summit and started to cultivate, stabilizing his great perfection blue-robed emperor cultivation. Time flashed. Soon, half a month went by. Xiao Chen's great perfection blue-robed emperor cultivation had stabilized. Now, he could control the heavenly seal as he pleased. With a thought, the dragon-shaped heavenly seal could activate all 10,000 heavenly laws. In an instant, he could bring out all the power of the world that he could. As the heavenly seal formed, Xiao Chen's comprehension of the world deepened. The world was no longer as fixed and unmoving as before. He could clearly feel the movement of the entire world. He could vaguely see the core laws of this universe, space and time, which were the lines of the chessboard of fate. However, he could only vaguely see them. He could not change these two great laws. This was especially so for the time laws. They were even more profound and ever-changing than the space laws, unfathomable. During this period, Mo Chen came by once. She had already completed the sketch of the Heaven Dragon City. Based on Mo Chen's estimates, the construction of the city could be completed within 2 years using 1 million manpower. Furthermore, with Mo Chen's ability to manage and command, it would be very fast. If it were someone else, they would need to coordinate with the other refiners, formation masters, and geomancers. That would take even longer, they might not even be able to complete it in 10 years. The refugees were relocated to the other small cities on Heavenly Star Island, as well as the 7 satellite islands. There was no need to doubt Lan Xiaobai's and Mo Chen's abilities in this aspect. The subsidiary islands that the other factions occupied were also taken over in an orderly manner. Heavenly Star Island's development entered a new trajectory, developing at a high speed. Everything proceeded smoothly and orderly. Now that Xiaoqun had some free time, he started refining medicinal pills. This was the heavenly origin pill that he promised to refine for the holy daughter, Yu Bingyun. After returning to Heavenly Star Island, Xiaoqun had been very busy and did not have much time. Since Xiaoqun had some free time, he switched to helping Yu Bingyun refine the heavenly origin pill. After all, he could not break his promise. The refinement process did not go smoothly. However, Xiaoqun was not in a rush. After all, the other party had prepared 100 sets of ingredients. There was no fear of failure. He would succeed one day. After 78 failures, Xiaoqun finally succeeded in refining this heavenly origin pill. Lord Blue Dragon King, the city lord says that there are honored guests visiting and invites you to the palace. A youth rushed up from the foot of the mountain nimbly. He had an expression of worship as he spoke respectfully to Xiaoqun. This youth was one of the young disciples that you taught. Xiaoqun could tell from his attire. These youths were all seedlings that Xiaoqun had picked from the ordinary people's clans. Their talent was pretty good, and they would be able to take on heavy responsibilities in the future. Xiaoqun put away the medicinal pill in his hand and rewarded the youth with some things. Then, the youth left happily. When regular people came to visit, Lan Xiaobai would not disturb him. This person probably had some status. Who could it be? Feeling curious, Xiaoqun pushed off the ground and flew towards the palace in the mountain. In a few breaths, Xiaoqun arrived outside the palace. When the disciples guarding the door saw him, they immediately bowed in greeting. Xiaoqun calmed his emotions and walked in calmly. He discovered that there were many people in the palace, but their attire was not the same. However, their cultivations were all at the peak of the great perfection blue-robed emperor. Furthermore, they were all aware that they could not merge their souls with the heavenly seal, so they focused on tempering their heavenly laws to raise their combat prowess. These people had remained at the peak for at least 100 years. Not only were their heavenly laws incredibly dense, but they were also purer. Their strength was unfathomable. The instant Xiaoqun stepped into the palace, he immediately felt several gazes probing him. When they saw that Xiaoqun was only a newly advanced great perfection blue-robed emperor, doubt flashed in their eyes. Lan Xiaobai, who was entertaining this group of people, immediately sent a voice projection when Xiaoqun came over. Xiaoqun, these are the vice sect masters of the nearby 9 ranks of the great families. On the surface, they are here to pay a visit out of courtesy, to befriend you. In reality, they do not have good intentions. They are here to probe us. As the saying went, those who come do not have good intentions, and those who are kind do not come. Xiaoqun could more or less guess the purpose of these people. After he heard Lan Xiaobai's voice projection, he performed a cupped fist salute and said, "Everyone, sorry for being late. The Blue Dragon King is too polite." Since they were here to pay a visit to Heavenly Star Island, they still had to show basic courtesy. These vice sect masters of the 9 ranks of the great families all stood up and returned the greeting. There were many of the 9 ranks of the great families in the heavenly starry ocean. As long as they had Emperor Wu, a sect with a Holy Spirit vein, and 2,000 disciples, they could be considered one of the 9 ranks of the great families. However, most of the nearby 9 ranks of the great families did not have any accumulations. Their inheritances would not exceed 1,000 years. Compared to the peak 9 ranks of the great families like the Haotian sect, there was a huge difference. Based on the vice sect masters seated here, they were merely peak great perfection quasi-emperors, so Xiaoqun could make some guesses. Based on what Xiaoqun knew, the vice sect masters of the Haotian sect were all minor heavenly sovereigns. Furthermore, there would only be one Emperor Wu. As far as Xiaoqun knew, the vice sect masters of the Haotian sect were already consummation blue-robed emperors many years ago. After the previous sect master became a greater heavenly Emperor Wu, he retired. There were still many supreme elders who were strong and had deep accumulations, having passed down their legacies for more than 10,000 years. Chapter 1134. As they walked forward, Xiaoqin sat in the middle and picked up his teacup. Then, he said indifferently, "Sorry, Heavenly Star Island just went through a great calamity. I do not have much to entertain you all with. If you all have a purpose, just say it." The several old men sitting on both sides were stunned. According to the rules of this place, when the host picked up his teacup, it meant that he was sending off the guests. When they heard Xiaoqian's words, it was clear that he was impatient and did not beat around the bush. Everyone could not help but turn silent. The spacious hall was quiet and peaceful. Lan Xiaobai found it funny. Xiaoqin was really Xiaoqin. He knew that this group of people came with ill intentions. He did not bother with pleasantries at all, getting straight to the point, not playing by the rules. Ha! Unexpectedly, at such a young age, the Blue Dragon King's temper is not small at all. What is the meaning of this? Sending off the guests with tea? A gray-robed old man on the right, furthest from Xiaoqian, asked with a superficial smile. Lan Xiaobai sent a voice projection. This is the Fire Beacon Sect's vice-sect master, Qian Zongqiao. He is considered a powerful person, especially with his palm strike. He is very incredible and famous in our sea region. Xiaoqin understood and ignored this person. He said indifferently, Heavenly Star Island just went through a great calamity. However, we also resolved some conflicts and took over all the subsidiary islands. I am very clear on what you are here for. Since you are not going to say it, I will say it for you. You are just here to probe out the situation, to see if I, Xiaoqian, can suppress such a large area. Then, to see if you have a chance to get some benefits for yourselves. The expressions of the others froze. After Xiaoqin said what they were thinking, they all felt somewhat unnatural. Only the Fire Beacon Sect's vice-sect master, Qian Zongqiao, laughed loudly and said, Blue Dragon King, you must be joking. Our Fire Beacon Sect is here to discuss cooperation. Xiaoqin smiled coldly and asked, what kind of cooperation? Naturally, it is a cooperation that is beneficial to both sides. Since Stellar Sky City was destroyed, it will require a lot of resources to rebuild it. I am representing the Fire Beacon Sect to send money to the Blue Dragon King. Right after Qian Zongqiao spoke, he waved his hand, and a pile of black astral coins flew out from his spatial ring. The faint light overlapped, dazzling the eyes. There should be about 5 million of them. Here is 5 million black astral coins. Our Fire Beacon Sect wishes to purchase Black Flame Island from the Blue Dragon King, Qian Zongqiao said casually. Wanting to buy Black Flame Island with 5 million black astral coins was simply daylight robbery. Bang! Bang! Seeing that Qian Zongqiao had made his intentions clear, the other 8 old men made their moves as well. Piles of black astral coins appeared in the hall, reaching 45 million black astral coins. This group of people had a startlingly large appetite. All that was left was the main island of Heavenly Star Island. They would have emptied out Xiaoqian's conferred land. 45 million black astral coins was already a huge sum. Even the peak blue-robed emperor would only have so much. Some of the weaker rank 8 sects would not have more than this sum. Some might even have less. Regular outstanding youths would find it hard to remain calm when they saw such a lineup. Their auras would be completely suppressed. However, who was Xiaoqin? He had even seen 1 billion black astral coins in the Dragon's Gate's treasure trove. This amount of money was like a drizzle to him. Xiaoqin wanted to use his wealth to suppress others and occupy the island in his conferred land, leaving others speechless. This was a brilliant move. Even if the Bushin Palace pursued the matter, Xiaoqin could say that he had used money to buy the island. This would leave others speechless, and they could only blame Xiaoqin for not living up to expectations. However, it was still the same as before. Playing this move before the rich Xiaoqin was like playing house. It was extremely laughable. A trace of mockery flashed in Qian Zongqiao's eyes. To think that a brat with no hair on his mouth wants to compete with us veterans. He is really naive. Qian Zongchao put down his teacup and said indifferently, I believe that the Blue Dragon King has never seen so much money before. With so many black astral coins, it is sufficient for you to rebuild 3 heavenly star cities. When Xiaoqin heard this, he could not help laughing softly. Competing with me in wealth? What could be funnier than this? Money came like a river and went like water. Before obtaining the Dragon's Gate's treasure trove, the black astral coins in Xiaoqian's hands were already more than the pile of money here. Furthermore, after obtaining the Dragon's Gate's treasure trove, Heavenly Star Island's accumulated wealth was no weaker than the 9 ranks of the great families. If Xiaoqin included that king's spirit vein, even the Holy Lands would not dare to boast so shamelessly before him. What are you laughing at? When Qian Zongchao saw the mocking smile on Xiaoqian's face, he felt a strange rage. Seated in the middle, Xiaoqin said indifferently, I'm laughing at your shameless boasting. You only took out 5 million black astral coins and still dare to boast before me, saying that you want to buy Black Flame Island. You say that I have never seen money before. I'm afraid that you do not know what true wealth is. How arrogant! How many black astral coins can you take out? Before Qian Zongchao could finish speaking, his jaw dropped. The shock in his eyes was so great that he could not continue. There was no other reason. Xiaoqin waved his hand, and piles of black astral coins appeared. There was a total of 9 piles. Each pile was twice the amount of black astral coins that the 9 ranks of the great families took out. There was no more, no less. Xiaoqin took out a total of 90 million black astral coins alone. If money can solve everything, then I will buy your entire fire beacon sect with these 90 million black astral coins. Do you agree? Xiaoqin shouted as he stood up. An overwhelming aura pressed down on Qian Zongchao. The 9 old men felt stifled in their hearts. Their thoughts went wild, and they found it somewhat difficult to control themselves. Originally, they wanted to use a large number of black astral coins to crush Xiaoqian's will. Who could have imagined that Xiaoqin would turn the tables on them? This shocked them, and they immediately fell silent. Their auras were completely suppressed by Xiaoqin. This was especially so for Qian Zongchao. His face alternated between red and green, feeling very sullen. When faced with Xiaoqian's interrogation, he felt stifled, not knowing how to reply. Damn it! No matter what, you have to sell Black Flame Island to my Fire Beacon sect. You have to sell it whether you want to or not. Unable to think of anything to say, Qian Zongchao directly stated his purpose, shedding all pretense of cordiality. Xiaoqin smiled faintly, becoming even more at ease. He slowly walked down and said calmly, What's wrong? Are you trying to force me to sell it? Qian Zongchao calmed down and remembered the sect master's instructions. He should do his best not to shed all pretense of cordiality. At the very least, he should not do so openly. He could not leave any room for discussion. After calming himself, Qian Zongchao said coldly, I don't dare to. Our Fire Beacon sect is rather famous. We never do things like force. I have long heard of the Blue Dragon King's unparalleled glory, instantly defeating all the outstanding talents of the world in one move at the Four Seas Hero Gathering. Do you dare to make a bet with this Qian? Xiaoqin asked indifferently, What do you want to bet? Qian Zongchao replied coldly, You instantly defeated all the outstanding talents of the world in one move at the Four Seas Hero Gathering. I will bet with you in one move as well. We will only compete in one move. Whoever is at a disadvantage will be the loser. If you lose, you will sell Black Flame Island to me. Don't say that my Fire Beacon sect is forcing you to sell it. If I lose, I will apologize, and the Fire Beacon sect will not seek trouble for Heavenly Star Island anymore. The moment Qian Zongchao said that, the crowd burst into an uproar. Right now, Xiaoqin was only an early-stage Great Perfection Blue-Robed Emperor. As for Qian Zongchao, he was at the peak of the Great Perfection Blue-Robed Emperor, having cultivated for 100 years. Furthermore, Qian Zongchao's palm technique made him famous among the many factions in the nearby sea region. His palm contained a boundless sea of fire and a horrifying explosive force. He had even smashed a small perfection blue-robed emperor to death with one palm strike. Blue Dragon King, do you dare to agree? Seeing that Xiao Chen was only an early-stage great perfection blue-robed emperor, Qian Zongchao felt very confident. He stepped forward and pressed on. Lan Xiaobai stopped Qian Zongchao and said, "Xiao Chen, don't fall for his trick. The cultivation technique, martial technique, and killing moves he cultivates are all explosive. When he fights with others, if he cannot severely injure his opponent with one palm strike, he will quickly flee." Lan Xiaobai had a very clear understanding of Qian Zongchao's information, so he advised Xiao Chen not to be rash. Xiao Chen understood what Lan Xiaobai meant. Some people were stuck at a certain bottleneck for their entire lives, unable to improve. After that, they would take an unconventional path and think of other ways to raise their combat prowess. This Qian Zongchao before Xiao Chen was one of those people. He focused all his attention on how to increase his explosive power. Qian Zongchao wanted to use money to suppress Xiao Chen but ended up being humiliated by Xiao Chen. So, he thought of this method to regain his momentum. If Xiao Chen did not agree, he would be seen as a coward. Qian Zongchao would use this to spread the rumor. Furthermore, Qian Zongchao would continuously seek trouble for him in the future. If Xiao Chen agreed, he would be playing into Qian Zongchao's hands. Qian Zongchao would not lose out no matter what. Waving his hand, Xiao Chen told Lan Xiaobai not to say anything else. There were so many vice sect masters watching. If Xiao Chen could resolve this matter well, he would be able to deter the surrounding factions, which would be of great benefit to Heavenly Star Island. Even though Xiao Chen knew that Qian Zongchao was trying to goad him, he still had to go. The most important thing was that Xiao Chen was not afraid of competing in explosive power. If it were a fair fight, he would drag it out. Given the depth of Qian Zongchao's cultivation, Xiao Chen would be at a disadvantage. It would be much more difficult to defeat Qian Zongchao, and he would have to pay a higher price as well. A clash of moves was exactly what Xiao Chen wanted. Qian Zongchao, who did not know that he had run into trouble, smiled and said, "How is it? Don't tell me that you, the bona fide Blue Dragon King, are afraid of an old man like me? I promise you." Xiao Chen smiled faintly as he stared at Qian Zongchao. Qian Zongchao could not blame him for seeking his own humiliation. Discussions immediately broke out in the hall. The other 8 old men were all very surprised. After learning about Qian Zongchao and his cultivation, Xiao Chen still chose to agree. The others withdrew and cleared out the black astral coins, creating an empty space. The buildings in the hall all had restrictions infused into them, which could endure a battle at the level of the blue-robed emperor. As long as it was not a drawn-out battle, they could settle it in one move. Lan Xiaobai knew that he could not dissuade Xiao Chen, so he sighed and retreated to the back as well. Hee. The Blue Dragon King truly lives up to his reputation as the Blue Dragon King. Unfortunately, you are too young. Today, I'll tell you that the older, the wiser. After Qian Zongchao spoke, he raised his leg and took a step forward. He did not move at all, but he arrived before Xiao Chen in an instant. Then, he threw a palm strike. The instant Qian Zongchao sent out his palm strike, the aura of a boundless sea of fire erupted. Chapter 1135. It looked like there was no build-up. However, the mysterious phenomenon that erupted was shockingly horrifying. Behind Qian Zongchao, the power of the world turned into a sea of flames that looked like a real sea. Waves overlapped, boundless, unfathomable, and immeasurable. Furthermore, based on the minute slow motion, one could see that every time Qian Zongchao's palm moved forward, a flaming wave would rise from the sea, one wave after another, overlapping. In the time it took for Qian Zongchao to stretch out his hand, tens of thousands of flaming waves overlapped. When it came into contact with Xiao Chen's palm, all the energy would erupt in an instant. Qian Zongchao lived up to his name. As a peak expert with explosive power, Qian Zongqiao had indeed broadened Xiao Chen's horizons. He let Xiao Chen know that none of these old blue-robed emperor, who had been stuck at peak great perfection for hundreds of years, were simple. However, that was all. This move was not enough to defeat Xiao Chen. With a thought, the dragon-shaped heavenly seal breathed. The 10,000 heavenly laws in Xiao Chen's body instantly stirred up, not stopping for a moment. The mysterious phenomenon triggered by the 10,000 heavenly laws stirring up the power of the world at the same time. It was like 10,000 true dragons drilled out of Xiao Chen's body. As the 10,000 dragons soared, cracks appeared in the buildings behind him. These buildings, which could withstand a strike from the blue-robed emperor, started cracking under the mysterious phenomenon triggered by Xiao Chen. A sorrowful aura lingered in the great hall amid the scarlet flowers. As a blood moon soared, Xiao Chen used the 1,000-year death to clash with Qian Zongqiao's palm strike, the boundless sea of flames. Boom! The instant the two palms clashed, the roof of the great hall was blown off and shattered into powder. The destructive power of the aftershocks from the two palms far surpassed everyone's expectations. The buildings that could withstand the might of the blue-robed emperor's battle were destroyed in half by the two palms. The two were competing in explosive power. From start to finish, their moves were clean and efficient, without any flourishes. The victor was decided in one breath. Xiao Chen didn't move from his original position. He slowly retracted his palm, causing his clothes and hair to slowly fall to the ground. Qian Zongqiao vomited a mouthful of blood and took 100 steps back before falling to the ground. He looked at Xiao Chen angrily and coughed out another mouthful of blood. He pointed at Xiao Chen and cursed, "You tricked me." Strictly speaking, Xiao Chen did scam him, but he was the one who picked this trap. In the Four Seas Hero Gathering, he dared to challenge all the outstanding talents and chose to decide the victor in one move. One of the main reasons was that his forte was the explosive power of killer moves. In less than half a month after advancing to great perfection Quasi-Emperor, Xiao Chen could instantly drive 10,000 heavenly laws with a thought, releasing and withdrawing them as he pleased. Qian Zongqiao dared to compete with Xiao Chen in explosive power, wanting to decide victory in one move. If this was not seeking his own humiliation, what was? Lan Xiaobai heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he stepped forward and said, "Sect Master Qian, I hope that you will abide by your promise. The people of the Fire Beacon sect will not appear in the sea region of Heavenly Star Island in the future." The other fellow cultivators heard it for themselves. Qian Zongqiao found it hard to express his bitterness. He had not expected that after living for several hundred years, he would fall to the hands of a junior. Even though Qian Zongqiao clearly held an absolute advantage, his expression did not change at all before the battle started. It was like he was pretending. Qian Zongqiao stood up and walked over to the black astral coins that he had tossed out. He prepared to put away the black astral coins and leave quickly. This time, he had completely embarrassed himself. "Wait!" Xiao Chen shouted coldly, stopping Qian Zongqiao's actions. Qian Zongqiao demanded angrily, "What do you want?" "I don't want to do anything. This hall is riddled with restrictions, and it is costly to build. You even blew off the roof, and you want to leave for nothing?" Xiao Chen said unhurriedly. "You have to leave behind these 5 million black astral coins. You are twisting words and forcing logic." Xiao Chen retorted indifferently, "That's right. I am twisting words and forcing logic. Whoever tries to reason with me, Xiao Chen, will do so. I will do so openly and openly. However, if anyone tries to be unreasonable with me, thinking of forcefully buying and selling or using force to bully others, Xiao Chen, will be even more unreasonable than them." Right after Xiao Chen spoke, he threw another palm strike. Before Qian Zongqiao could reply, he directly sent him flying, not giving him any face at all. The other 8 old men immediately exchanged glances. Xiao Chen's forcefulness and his words were clearly directed at them. Just as these old men were feeling uneasy, wondering if Xiao Chen would snatch back their black astral coins, Xiao Chen smiled and said, "Everyone, are you not going to take back your black astral coins?" Xiao Chen smiled and said, "Everyone, are you not going to take back your black astral coins?" When the group heard this, they immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Then, they quickly took back the 5 million black astral coins that they had tossed out. When the group heard this, they immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Then, they quickly took back the 5 million black astral coins that they had tossed out. After these old men took back their black astral coins, Xiao Chen sent out a palm strike. Amid a loud sound, the pile of black astral coins that Qian Zongqiao left behind turned into dust. 5 million black astral coins turned to dust before the eyes of these old men. This sight stunned them into stupefaction. 5 million black astral coins was a significant sum for any of the blue-robed emperors. However, Xiao Chen did not even blink, directly shattering it with one palm strike. What does this mean? Everyone thought to themselves. These old men were all experienced people who had lived for several hundred years. They quickly understood what Xiao Chen meant. This was Xiao Chen expressing his stance. Xiao Chen did not care about 5 million black astral coins. He wanted Qian Zongqiao to leave behind these black astral coins to make the other party pay the price. Anyone who wanted to target Heavenly Star Island needed to be mentally prepared to pay the price. Otherwise, they would end up like this pile of black astral coins before them. After the vice sect masters of the 9 ranks of the great families reacted, they immediately smiled and started chatting with Xiao Chen. They all promised that they would not seek trouble for Heavenly Star Island and that this matter was just a misunderstanding. After seeing Xiao Chen's strength, it would not be wise for them to try anything. Although the 9 ranks of the great families had Emperor Wu holding down the fort, and Xiao Chen was definitely not a match for them, Emperor Wu could not possibly remain in his sect at all times. People like Xiao Chen who offended Xiao Chen would take advantage of the fact that Emperor Wu was not around to seek trouble for him every 2 or 3 days, causing everyone to panic. It was not the first time that such a large sect was killed until only a general was left. Those who had nothing to lose were not afraid of slippers. If both sides suffered, it would not be good for either side. The most important thing was that Xiao Chen was rather clever. He only taught Qian Zongqiao a lesson. He did not make things difficult for the other old men who took out their black astral coins. This was considered as not shedding all pretense. This made it much easier to talk to them. "I'll take my leave first. In the future, if the Blue Dragon King has time, you can come to our sect for a visit and improve our relationship." Since the roof of the Great Hall had been torn off, it was clearly not suitable for them to remain for long. After everyone expressed their stance, the various old men got up and prepared to leave. Lan Xiaobai heaved a sigh of relief at the side. This matter was finally resolved. One could not be too polite to such people. The weaker one was, the more others would think that one was easy to bully. Xiao Chen had handled the situation appropriately. He had displayed his strength without offending everyone. Just at this moment, a strong mental pressure swept out in all directions. Everyone on Heavenly Star Island felt like a pair of ruthless eyes were staring at them. Suddenly, they did not dare to move at all. It was as if they were facing a great enemy. They all felt fear in their hearts for some reason. This gaze seemed to sweep through the entire island before focusing on Xiao Chen. This made the others release their bated breath. This is the might and pressure of Emperor Wu. The group of old men in the Great Hall were very knowledgeable and quickly determined the strength of this newcomer. Could it be that Qian Zongqiao is unconvinced and got his sect master to come personally? It does not seem like it. Furthermore, that is impossible. The Fire Beacon sect's sect master would not dare to ignore Bushan Palace. Furthermore, this time, Qian Zongqiao messed things up. He is not in the right at all. Given the character of the Fire Beacon sect's sect master, even if he came, he would be trying to mend the relationship. The most important thing is that this might does not seem like the might and pressure of a minor heavenly Emperor Wu. It is much stronger than the Fire Beacon sect's sect masters. The expressions of the few old men changed as they discussed in soft voices. They could not guess which martial emperor came. Who would be so bold as to come here with Emperor Wu's cultivation? After all, Shao Chen was the Thunder King's favored Blue Dragon King. This was Bushan Palace's conferred land. Even if Shao Chen coveted the resources here and sent a group of subordinates over, when Bushan Palace investigated, they could still say that Shao Chen was not as skilled as others. If Shao Chen could not defeat cultivators of the same cultivation and was not worthy of occupying this sea region, Bushan Palace would have nothing to say. If Shao Chen personally came, he clearly did not conform to some secret rules. Was he not mocking the fact that Bushan Palace had no one? Bushan Palace could not just sit back and watch. Otherwise, they would lose face, the entire Bushan Palace. Lan Xiaobai's heart sank. He more or less guessed who had come. He frowned heavily. This would not be easy to deal with. Big trouble was coming. Back then, Shao Chen had directly killed the purple-clad man of the 7 heroes of the dragon. This time, it was probably the purple-clad man's father, the purple-clad Marquis, who had come personally. Shao Chen felt extremely uncomfortable enduring the huge might. His legs turned soft, and he nearly knelt down. The difference in cultivation was too great. Just the formless might was unblockable. Chi! At the crucial moment, little yellow feather flew out of the immortal spirit ring and landed on Shao Chen's shoulder. It used its holy beast bloodline to share some of the pressure for Shao Chen. Shao Chen flicked his finger and discovered that he could move. With a thought, a golden sage feather appeared in his hand and hid it in his sleeve. This was the last resort of the Golden Crow race. At a crucial moment, it could severely injure Emperor Wu in exchange for a chance to live. This was Shao Chen's greatest trump card. A sharp-eyed person recognized little yellow feather on Shao Chen's shoulder and cried out in shock, "The Golden Crow Holy Beast." This was a legendary holy beast of the immortal epoch, possessing a noble bloodline. It only existed in ancient texts, rarely seen. Yet, Shao Chen had this golden crow as a pet. Hu Qi. The space in the hall tore easily, and an imposing middle-aged man wearing purple dragon robes and battle armor walked out with large strides. His aura was extraordinary, and an intimidating pressure was emitted from his body. The purple-clad Marquis. Astonishment came one after another. The martial emperor who came was actually Neptune's old subordinate, the current purple-clad Marquis. He was a greater heavenly Emperor Wu, a true peak character of the Western Sea. Chapter 1136. The purple-clad Marquis' faction was also one of the 9 ranks of the great families. However, in terms of accumulations, the purple-clad Marquis' faction was much stronger than the 9 ranks of the great families. Even if the major sects worked together, they would barely be able to deal with the purple-clad Marquis. Furthermore, the Western Sea Divine Dragon Palace supported him. When the old men saw this scene, they could not help but wonder. The purple-clad Marquis personally came with a hostile expression. Something major must have happened. Shao Chen was probably in trouble. Another variable appeared in Heavenly Star Island. Primordial Golden Crow, brat, you are really overflowing with luck. You can even subdue such a mythical holy beast. I won't speak any nonsense. You should know what I am here for. You are probably mentally prepared. The purple-clad Marquis glanced at the ferocious-looking little yellow feather on Shao Chen's shoulder. Then, he shifted his gaze to Shao Chen and asked unhurriedly. After the initial panic, Shao Chen had already calmed down. He replied indifferently, "How can a major character like Senior have anything to do with me? If Senior has anything to say, just say it. This Junior is all ears." The purple-clad Marquis did not say anything. However, those old men were startled. To think that Shao Chen dared to speak to a greater heavenly Emperor Wu like that. As long as the other party wanted to, the purple-clad Marquis could instantly kill Shao Chen in one breath. The difference in strength between the two was like heaven and earth, like clouds and mud. Any technique, will, or martial technique would be like fleeting clouds before the purple-clad Marquis. Indeed, you are certain that I do not dare to kill you. Who knew? The purple-clad Marquis would laugh when he heard this, looking incredibly amiable. However, after a while, his expression turned cold. He said in a frosty voice. However, you are just seeking trouble by showing off your pride before a greater heavenly emperor. With each word, the purple-clad Marquis's expression turned colder. The entire heavenly star island started to tremble intensely as he spoke. The clouds pressed down like the sky was falling. When the purple-clad Marquis finished speaking, an overwhelming pressure bore down on Xiao Chen. The air nearly froze. Everyone could feel Purple Marquis's monstrous rage, and they trembled in fear, not even daring to breathe loudly. It was true that Purple Marquis couldn't kill Xiao Chen, but he could teach him a lesson and beat him up. As long as Xiao Chen didn't die, there wouldn't be too much trouble. Xiao Chen's attitude was indeed asking for trouble. The group of old men all thought that he was courting death. In front of the great emperor, one should display humility. How could one act so casually? This was simply a great disrespect, and one could only blame oneself for any consequences. Despite the terrifying atmosphere, Xiao Chen did not show any signs of backing down. He said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "If you have something to say, just say it. I will listen and do my best to help. But if you want to rely on your status and strength to teach a junior an unreasonable lesson, then I, Xiao Chen, am not a pushover." Ha ha ha. When Purple Marquis heard that, he guffawed like he heard something extremely funny. He said, "If not for the Thunder King supporting me, I would be able to flick you to death with one finger. Killing you would be as easy as killing an ant. Why can't I bully you? I'll be honest. You killed my, Purple Marquis's, son. Although I cannot kill you now, if I do not beat you half to death today, it will be hard for me to swallow this frustration." With a flip of his hand, Xiao Chen caught that golden tail feather between two fingers. When he drove it with all his might, it gave off a blazing aura. A golden solar flame formed a thick pillar of fire that soared into the sky from Xiao Chen's body, piercing through the clouds. The blazing light was too bright, plunging the surroundings into darkness. Only this pillar of fire soared into the sky, burning fiercely. This is, the expression of Purple Marquis, who was preparing to make a move, slowly turned grave. He stared at the golden tail feather between Xiao Chen's fingers. This commotion shocked the others as well. To think that Xiao Chen intended to make a move against a greater heavenly martial emperor. Was he crazy? As a greater heavenly emperor Wu, Purple Marquis could level Heavenly Star Island with one thought. However, at this moment, he felt a great threat from that tiny feather. Purple Marquis swept his gaze across the golden crow. When he saw that the little golden crow also had two golden tail feathers that stood out from the crowd, he suddenly understood. Now that he understood what Xiao Chen was holding, his heart sank. He said softly, "Golden tail feather, a life-saving technique passed down by the golden crow race. Xiao Chen, you really give me many surprises. To think that the golden crow holy beast would give you one of its most precious items. However, if you think that this thing can scare me, then you are too naive. I guarantee that if you dare to make a move, you will be the one at a disadvantage in the end." Bathed in the golden pillar of fire, Xiao Chen held the golden tail feather between two fingers. He said indifferently, "That's right. I will be the one at a disadvantage. Even if I use this golden tail feather, I will only be able to injure you severely. However, I will lose a life-saving trump card and will still be beaten half to death by you. No matter how you look at it, the losses outweigh the gains. However, there are some things in this world that cannot be determined by whether you suffer a loss or not. Right is right, and wrong is wrong. Your son came to my Heavenly Star Island to cause trouble, killing the residents of my Heavenly Star Island, injuring my brothers, and humiliating my friends. His death is not to be regretted." The moment Purple Marquis said that, there was a huge commotion. The 8 old men felt their legs go soft. They finally understood why Purple Marquis was so angry. It turned out that Xiao Chen actually killed his son. The son of a martial emperor died at Xiao Chen's hands. After killing a martial emperor's son, not only did Xiao Chen show no intention of apologizing or begging for mercy, but he even confronted Purple Marquis. No wonder Purple Marquis disregarded his status and wanted to personally teach Xiao Chen a lesson, saying that he would beat Xiao Chen half to death. I am not in the wrong. The one in the wrong is your son. Even if you came personally, it would be impossible for me, Xiao Chen, to apologize. Wrong is wrong, right is right. Since you dare to make a move on me, I dare to risk my life to accompany you. I believe that your enemies would be very happy to see a severely injured Purple Marquis. Xiao Chen did not show any fear in the face of danger. He stared at Purple Marquis and argued for what was right, neither servile nor overbearing. Xiao Chen was not trying to be a hero or being arrogant. However, there were some things that he needed to persevere on. There were some beliefs that he absolutely could not waver on. Xiao Chen could not lose his principles just because the other party had a good father. He could not lower his head and admit his mistakes. He would rather break than bend his pride. For some reason, when Xiao Chen said those words, it gave others a misconception. Purple Marquis, who was wearing purple dragon robes and battle armor, a bona fide martial emperor with a surging aura, seemed to be much weaker than Xiao Chen's. Lan Xiaobai, who was at the side, felt his blood boil. A flame burned in his chest. When he faced Purple Marquis's strong aura, he did his best to take a step forward and guffawed, Xiao Chen, having a brother like you in this life is worth it. Then, Lan Xiaobai turned to Purple Marquis and shouted, Purple Marquis, your son died because of me. If you want to humiliate Xiao Chen, you will have to do it over my corpse. In the future, my Azura race will definitely have seniors who will seek justice for you. Lan Xiaobai had a hard time saying these words. Before the might of a martial emperor, he had to use all his strength and clench his teeth to say each word. However, Lan Xiaobai had to say it. Xiao Chen killed Purple Marquis's son because of Lan Xiaobai. Today, when a martial emperor came, Xiao Chen blocked all of them by himself, not lowering his head or bending his back, facing a martial emperor. He, Lan Xiaobai, would not be a coward either. Me too. Purple Marquis, if you want to humiliate elder brother Xiao Chen, you will have to do it over Yu's corpse. I, Jin Lin, am willing to sacrifice my life to accompany you. I, Yu Chenxi, will not stand by and watch you humiliate senior brother Xiao. Me too. The pillar of flame soaring into the sky from Xiao Chen's body was like a beacon in the darkness, gathering everyone on Heavenly Star Island. All of them showed rage on their faces as they looked at Purple Marquis without fear. More people gathered. Aside from the cultivators of Heavenly Star Island, the ordinary residents came out as well. Countless pairs of eyes stared coldly at purple-clad Marquis in the darkness. Everyone was of one mind, willing to block this calamity for Xiao Chen. When the voices merged together, everyone felt a hot-bloodedness surge in their bodies. To Purple Marquis, these people were all ants. As long as he wanted to, he could easily kill them all, not leaving a single one alive. However, Purple Marquis had never experienced such a situation in his life. Since the day he stepped onto the martial Dao, he had never seen such a scene that shook his soul. What kind of person could make these millions of people walk out of the darkness, threaten to die, and disregard their own safety? The 8 old men were all dumbfounded. They had not expected that after a martial emperor appeared, so many people from Heavenly Star Island would step forward. As expected, the scene of the purple-clad Marquis beating Xiao Chen half to death did not happen. Instead, Xiao Chen was enveloped by the formless energy field. Instead, he was completely suppressed by Heavenly Star Island, unable to say anything for a long time. Of course, Purple Marquis could not possibly kill all these people. He was not an evil cultivator and was not that deranged. However, such a situation surpassed his expectations. After he returned from the starry heavens, he heard the news of his son's death. Purple Marquis had only wanted to come to Heavenly Star Island to stand up for his son, to teach Xiao Chen a ruthless lesson and make him apologize. Who would have thought that such a scene would occur? Xiao Chen, you are indeed capable. This Marquis has to admit that your rise and fame are not exaggerated at all. However, you should know that before a martial emperor, even 10 times the number of people before you are nothing. Purple Marquis muttered to himself for a while before continuing, "If I want to hurt you, no matter how many people you have, you will not be able to stop me. As long as you apologize to me for today's matter, I, Purple Marquis, will keep my word. In the future, I will not seek trouble for you. Just take it that my son is not as skilled as you." When the 8 old men heard this, they were greatly startled. The Purple Marquis, who swept through the Western Sea, was actually forced to take a step back by Xiao Chen. If word of this got out, no one would believe it. Xiao Chen's white robes flickered with a golden light as he said calmly, "Since I am not in the wrong, why should I apologize? Any senior who has stepped on the Emperor's road is worthy of my, Xiao Chen's, respect. That includes Senior Purple Marquis. However, it is still the same thing. There are some things where right is right and wrong is wrong. Along the way, Xiao Chen has adhered to this principle. He will not change it in this life or regret it even in death. If you want to make a move, Xiao Chen is willing to welcome you at any time." Chapter 1137. Holding the plume feather in his right hand, Xiao Chen did not change his principles because of purple-clad Marquis' concession. He prepared to toss the plume feather at the other party, not hesitating to take him down with him. How hateful! Purple-clad Marquis roared in his heart. He had never felt so sullen and conflicted like this before. It was not only because of the plume feather in Xiao Chen's hand that he feared but also because of Xiao Chen's persistence, which purple-clad Marquis found extremely terrifying. Since ancient times, perhaps there had been someone more outstanding than Xiao Chen among the outstanding talents of the past. However, this unyielding character, as well as this pointless persistence, was probably the only one who had ever done it before and would never be able to do it in the future. Good. 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 After saying, "good," 3 times in a row, purple-clad Marquis made his decision. He was no longer willing to waste time with Xiao Chen here. He said coldly, "Hand over my son's corpse, and I will let you off for now." The plume feather circled around Xiao Chen and absorbed the pillar of fire soaring into the sky. The darkness disappeared, and sunlight shone down once more. Everyone from Heavenly Star Island revealed a smile on their faces. They had won. "Xiao Bai, hand the corpse to purple-clad Marquis," Xiao Chen said after putting away the plume feather. "Wait. Purple-clad Marquis, since you know that you are in the wrong, I cannot let you take the corpse away for nothing." Just as Lan Xiaobai was about to make a move, 2 people suddenly appeared in the damaged hall, one old and one young. Even purple-clad Marquis had not noticed these 2 people. Everyone's gazes focused on the old man who spoke. They were startled. This was actually another greater heavenly Emperor Wu. When Lan Xiaobai and Yu saw the old man and the young man's faces clearly, they revealed expressions of extreme joy. That young man was none other than the Azura race's Lan Tianji. After such a long time, he finally returned. He even brought a greater celestial Emperor Wu of the Shura tribe with him. Actually, if one thought about it, it was easy to guess. Apart from the Azura race, who else would be able to appear silently in front of Purple Marquis? When purple-clad Marquis saw the old man's appearance, his expression changed as he recognized him. "You are Lan Chaofeng, the Flying Snow Mountain Manor's former first rank on the Heaven Series ranking of assassins." The Flying Snow Mountain Manor was a mysterious assassin organization in the Kunlun realm. Any cultivator could become an assassin there. You could choose to reveal your identity, or you could choose to hide it. Most people were afraid of trouble, so they only used a code name. Only a small number of people had no qualms about using their real identity, or they wanted to become famous in the first place. These people were mostly loose cultivators. Completing assassin missions of a certain difficulty would earn them points to upgrade their level. Among them, the Heaven Series assassin was the highest rank in the Flying Snow Manor. As long as one became a Heaven Series assassin, every time they took action, they would receive a sky-high reward. However, if one wanted to become a Heaven Series assassin, the most basic requirement was to have Emperor Wu's cultivation. After that, one had to go through a series of tests before one could be officially conferred the title of a Heaven Series assassin. One of the tests was to kill 5 Emperor Wu. Just thinking about it made one feel that it was as difficult as ascending to heaven. After becoming Emperor Wu and cultivating the heart of an emperor, he was already very difficult to kill. It was not strange for Emperor Wu to fall. However, it was extremely difficult to truly kill Emperor Wu. Right now, the number of Heaven series assassins in the entire Flying Snow Mountain Manor could be counted on 2 hands. Every one of them was unfathomable, inspiring fear in others. Ordinary people would not know the identities of these Heaven series assassins. They might not even have heard of them. However, in Emperor Wu's circle, once one's strength reached a certain level, this was no secret. Due to the Azura race's innate talent in space, they had an innate advantage in being assassins. In reality, many famous experts were Azura race cultivators. This ordinary-looking old man before Xiao Chen was actually the top rank of the Heaven series assassin ranking. He could not help but tremble in fear. The ordinary-looking Lan Chaofeng smiled faintly and said, "I have not made a move in many years." Unexpectedly, the purple-clad marquis in the distant heavenly starry ocean has heard of me. How surprising. The purple-clad marquis smiled coldly to himself. At least 10 Emperor Wus had died at the hands of this old man. In Emperor Wu's circle, this fellow's name was even more horrifying than several sovereign martial emperors. He was known as the Life Reaper Azura. Fortunately, this fellow had not taken any missions for several hundred years, slowly fading out of their circle. However, Lan Chaofeng had not expected to meet the person that Emperor Wu did not want to meet in this rundown place. After not seeing Lan Chaofeng for several hundred years, not only did this fellow not die, but he even became a greater heavenly Emperor Wu. His cultivation was even deeper than Lan Chaofeng's. When Lan Chaofeng was a minor heavenly Emperor Wu, he could already threaten some greater heavenly Emperor Wus. Now that Lan Chaofeng was a greater heavenly Emperor Wu, his cultivation was even higher than purple-clad marquis. Lan Chaofeng was even less of a match for him. The purple-clad marquis felt very depressed. This matter was already in the bag. First, Xiao Chen's unyielding pride forced him to give in again and again. Now, there was this Lan Chaofeng. Even if Xiao Chen wanted to take the corpse, there would be many variables. The purple-clad marquis raged in his heart. He looked at Lan Chaofeng and said, "What exactly do you want? This has nothing to do with you, right?" Lan Chaofeng replied indifferently, "It's very simple. Since you admit that you are in the wrong, then apologize to my disciple on behalf of your son. Then, apologize to this little brother. If you do not want to apologize, fine. Just throw down 10 million black astral coins. Otherwise, you can forget about taking your son's corpse away." Tyrannical. Be it the many cultivators of Heavenly Star Island or the few old men outside, they could not help exclaiming in their hearts. Lan Chaofeng's son died and he came to seek trouble. Based on the current situation, he would have to apologize to Heavenly Star Island instead. This mysterious old man who suddenly appeared was truly tyrannical. "Lan Chaofeng, don't go overboard." The purple-clad marquis immediately became enraged. He did not care about 10 million black astral coins. However, he could not afford to lose face like this. Ha! Indeed, after not making a move for 1,000 years, the title of life-reaping Azura is just a symbol in the eyes of some people. Lan Chaofeng smiled faintly, and an ancient black coin appeared in his hand. That ancient coin seemed to have a life of its own. It jumped around and spun around his fingers. This was clearly a very simple action, but it dazzled everyone, making them dizzy. It was only then that the crowd noticed this unprepossessing old man. This unprepossessing old man had a pair of extremely perfect hands. This was because when the ancient coin jumped around, no one felt any energy fluctuations at all. This old man used his nimble fingers to perform all sorts of incredible actions. Seeing the mysterious ancient coin jump around, purple-clad marquis's heart sank. According to rumor, when that coin stopped jumping around, Lan Chaofeng would make his move. According to an even more exaggerated rumor, when one saw Lan Chaofeng spinning the ancient coin, one would no longer think of fleeing, as one would not be able to. When the black astral coins stopped jumping around, one would no longer have the chance to counterattack, as one would no longer have the chance. One would just quietly wait for death. In Lan Chaofeng's long life of killing, countless famous people had used their lives to verify the veracity of this rumor. This was where the title of life-reaping Azura came from. Purple-clad Marquis's thoughts raced. In an instant, he thought of thousands of methods. However, none of them could allow him to escape unscathed from Lan Chaofeng. Bang! With a flip of his hand, a pile of black astral coins appeared in the dilapidated hall. Then, purple-clad Marquis said, "Give me my son's corpse." Lan Xiaobai, who had been prepared for a long time, waved his hand, and tossed out a coffin from his spatial ring. Purple-clad Marquis put away the coffin without even looking at it. Then, he turned around and tore space, quickly leaving this place. Lan Chaofeng, who used only one coin to force purple-clad Marquis away, smiled faintly. Without anyone seeing Lan Chaofeng do anything, the mysterious ancient coin in his hand vanished. As Huan Jintian watched purple-clad Marquis leave, cheers rang out in Heavenly Star Island. Even someone as strong as purple-clad Marquis suffered a great loss on Heavenly Star Island, not daring to have any other thoughts. This made every cultivator who stood up for Shaoqun feel incomparably proud. There was a sense of honor in everyone's hearts. Blue Dragon King, I forgot something earlier. You said that you came to visit Heavenly Star Island. In the end, you came empty-handed. This is not very polite. You must accept these 5 million black astral coins. I'm getting old, and my memory is bad. Blue Dragon King, please don't mind me. I can reluctantly accept these 5 million black astral coins as a gift. This old man will make up for it when I pay a formal visit in the future. The few old men, who were preparing to leave, quickly ran over. Their faces brimmed with smiles as they left the 5 million black astral coins, wanting Shaoqun to accept them. These old men did not even give Shaoqun a chance to refuse. After tossing down the black astral coins, they quickly left. That was then, and this was now. Earlier, Shaoqun only made them feel some fear. In the future, they could not afford to offend Heavenly Star Island. However, when they saw how united the many cultivators of Heavenly Star Island were, how boldly Shaoqun dared to face off against a martial emperor, and how mysterious the Azura race martial emperor was, all of this pointed to Heavenly Star Island's rise. Everything showed that Heavenly Star Island's rise was just around the corner. Currying favor with Heavenly Star Island in advance was the right thing to do. Shaoqun's expression remained calm. He did not think much of this. Together with Lan Xiaobai, they quickly headed for that tyrannical Azura race martial emperor. If not for this old man's appearance, even if purple-clad Marquis was chased away by Shaoqun, he would not be satisfied and would come back sooner or later. However, now, he was scared away. In the future, even if Shaoqun invited him, he would not dare to come casually. How come I have never heard you mention your master? Shaoqun asked Lan Xiaobai, who was beside him, as they walked. Lan Xiaobai's smile slowly faded as he recalled this matter. It seemed like he thought of some bad news. He said, 5 years ago, my master said that he was going to break through to Sovereign Martial Emperor. After that, there has been no news of him. Looking at it now, I'm afraid he failed. Breaking through to Sovereign Martial Emperor was not only extremely dangerous, but there was also only one chance. If one missed this chance, there would not be a second chance. There had never been a precedent since ancient times. Shaoqun consoled, it's fine. At the very least, he is still fine. Chapter 1138. Lan Xiaobai revealed a smile again. He nodded and said, right. Those who fail to break through to Sovereign Martial Emperor lose their lives. The fact that Master survived is already the best news. As they spoke, the two officially met with Lan Tianji and Lan Chaofeng. Shaoqun performed a cup-fist salute and said, many thanks to senior's help this time. I cannot thank you enough. The unprepossessing Lan Chaofeng smiled and said, you are too humble. Even if I did not appear, you would have more or less settled the matter. In front of the greater celestial Emperor Wu, a young man who dares to uphold his own principles. This is the first time I've seen someone like you. Furthermore, you were the one who stood up for Xiao Bai in the first place. That's why you attracted all this trouble. Furthermore, you are the one who took the blame. I should be the one saying thank you. Tianqi and I are right, Xiao Bai did not follow the wrong person. Lan Tianji smiled and said, Master never believed it. Given Xiao Bai's character, how could he be willing to follow someone of the younger generation? Now that I personally saw it, I have no choice but to believe it. Lan Xiaobai was more concerned about breaking through to Sovereign Martial Emperor. He asked, Master, how is your breakthrough to Sovereign Martial Emperor going? The moment Xiao Qin said this, Lan Tianji and Lan Chaofeng could not hide their smiles. Xiao Qin and Lan Xiaobai immediately felt that something was wrong. There was probably something unexpected. How difficult is it for a martial emperor to be conferred king? Tianqi, just tell me. Lan Chaofeng sighed, not willing to talk about this matter. Lan Tianji thought for a while and said, it failed. The sovereign's tribulation is boundlessly horrifying. Master only has 20 to 30 years left to live. What? Upon hearing this, Lan Xiaobai and Xiao Chen's expressions changed drastically. They were lucky to have survived the failed king's conferment, but they did not expect that there would be such serious consequences. Lan Chaofeng smiled gently and said, everyone dies. Even someone as strong as the Qing Emperor and the strongest person in the world, the Thunder King, cannot avoid it. Without becoming a martial god, no one can avoid it. Don't mind it too much, this old man has lived long enough. Master. Lan Xiaobai's voice sounded somewhat choked. Lan Tianji had not come for so long. He was probably taking care of Lan Chaofeng, who failed his tribulation. Little did he expect that when he finally managed to meet Lan Tianji, he would receive such a piece of news. Lan Chaofeng felt moved in his heart. He smiled and scolded, it's fine. Work hard. I might be able to see the day when you and Tianqi are conferred kings. Xiao Chen, who had been listening to their conversation, suddenly had a thought. He asked, Senior, have you consumed natural treasures that can increase your lifespan? Lan Chaofeng smiled bitterly and said, this natural treasure that can increase one's lifespan is something that can only be found and not sought. When I was young, I obtained a few. But I didn't pay much attention to it and gave it to some old friends. Now I can't find it no matter how hard I try. Some things weren't worth much, and they weren't even used normally. However, when he really needed it, he realized that it was something that could only be chanced upon. No matter how hard he searched, he could not find it. Xiao Qin still had 2 longevity fruits in his hand. He quickly took one out and said, this is a longevity fruit. It can extend one's lifespan by 100 years. If Senior cannot find a better natural treasure, you can consume this. The few of them all showed joy on their faces. Unexpectedly, Xiao Qin had such a treasure that could not be sought after. Xiao Bai, help your master keep it. I have no use for this thing, anyway. Xiao Qin handed the longevity fruit to Lan Tianji for him to pass to his master. Xiao Qin had a longevity fruit that could give others 100 years of lifespan. However, he could not break free from the nightmare of 4 years. Lan Chaofeng received the longevity fruit from Xiaobai's hand and entered deep thought, like he was about to make a decision. After a while, he said, originally, I planned to come to Heavenly Star Island to see Xiaobai before leaving, then go look for natural treasures that can extend one's lifespan. Since you gave me a longevity fruit, then this old man will stay here for a while. I can't keep watching others bully my 2 disciples. Xiao Qin rejoiced in his heart. Lan Chaofeng's words meant that he agreed to stay on Heavenly Star Island. With an Azura emperor who could force the purple-clad marquis to retreat, there was no need to worry about Heavenly Star Island's safety. Lan Xiaobai and Lan Tianji were equally happy that a senior like Lan Chaofeng could remain on Heavenly Star Island. Master, have you heard about what happened to Xiao Chen? It was rare for Lan Xiaobai to meet a bona fide martial emperor. Furthermore, Lan Chaofeng was his relative. He could not help but ask about Xiao Chen's matter. Lan Chaofeng nodded. If the Blue Dragon King did not advance to martial emperor in 5 years, he had only 20 more years to live. For some reason, this news set the Kunlun continent abuzz. In nearly 1 month, it spread throughout the entire Kunlun continent, causing a huge commotion. Lan Tianji entered deep thought. Advancing to martial emperor in 5 years? That might not be impossible. Only 1 year has passed, and Xiao Chen already reached great perfection blue-robed emperor. In this age of geniuses, any miracle can happen. As someone with experience, Lan Chaofeng shook his head and said, that is hard to say. As long as there are sufficient resources, advancing from small perfection blue-robed emperor to great perfection blue-robed emperor can be done quickly. Since ancient times, Xiao Chen's current cultivation speed is not considered very fast. Xiao Chen nodded and said, I have no problems with resources. Can Senior give me some pointers on how to merge my soul with the heavenly seal and form the vague form of the heart of an emperor? The great tribulation of wind and fire was still far away. Right now, Xiao Chen was most concerned about how to perfectly merge his soul with the heavenly seal. Lan Chaofeng said, given the comprehension abilities of you outstanding talents, this stage is actually not difficult. You can clear it sooner or later. However, this requires a long time to test it out. Then, when the conditions are right, success will follow. Others will not be able to give you pointers. However, what you lack the most right now is time. Lan Chaofeng's words hit the crucial point. This stage could stop 90% of blue-robed emperors. However, this 90% definitely did not include the outstanding talents with high comprehension abilities. Naturally, Xiao Chen was no exception. What he lacked was time. Is there any way for me to clear this stage quickly? Xiao Chen continued asking, perhaps in history, were there any people who used a very short time to perfectly merge their soul with the heavenly seal? Lan Chaofeng thought carefully and shook his head. As far as I know, there were no such people. However, I only know the history of the Kunlun continent. This oceanic world might not necessarily not have such a person. Xiao Chen felt somewhat disappointed. It looked like he could not count on anyone else for this stage. It was as Elder Qin said, he could only rely on himself. 10 days later, the news of purple-clad Marquis running into a wall at Heavenly Star Island quickly spread throughout the entire Western Sea. The scene of Xiao Chen facing off with a martial emperor was described vividly, quickly spreading among the cultivators. A great perfection blue-robed emperor actually dared to face off with a martial emperor like purple-clad Marquis. In the end, he even managed to gain the upper hand. If not for many people verifying the authenticity of this news, no one would believe it. In the next 3 days, aside from the nearby sects, all the sects in the entire Western Sea came to visit. Even Qian Zongchao, whom Xiao Chen knocked back with a palm strike, came to apologize with heavy gifts. For a while, Heavenly Star Island became very prosperous. It finally gained a firm foothold in this chaotic heavenly starry ocean. It would no longer be seen as an outsider. There would always be people coming to covet those subsidiary resource islands. Xiao Chen rejected all the social engagements and focused on cultivation, not letting these trivial matters disturb him. However, today, he received a piece of news that made Xiao Chen come out of his closed-door cultivation room without any hesitation. Kim Tae-ho had returned from the Black Sea with the Green Dragon Chamber of Commerce's huge merchant ship. When Xiao Chen received news of Kim Tae-ho's return, he immediately came out of his state of silent cultivation. He had been tempted long ago and could not wait to go to the Black Sea. Xiao Chen met with Kim Tae-ho in a pavilion. Xiao Chen looked the same as before, adorned with jewels and glowing with health. He fanned himself with a golden folding fan, and the shrewdness of a merchant was written all over his face. However, Xiao Chen noticed a faint black line on Xiao Chen's forehead. It was like some kind of negative emotion had gathered together. Hee hee. Brother Xiao Chen, you are finally back, Kim Tae-ho immediately said with a smile when he saw Xiao Chen. The two chatted for a while. Then, Xiaochen asked about the Black Sea and the development of the Green Dragon Chamber of Commerce. Finally, he asked about Batu's situation. According to Kim Taeho's introduction, the Black Sea was not much smaller than the heavenly starry ocean. It was extremely vast, and the islands were even denser. According to legend, the islands of the Black Sea were originally a complete continent with many ancient factions and many legendary characters. Later on, for some reason, it shattered, resulting in the current situation. The islands were as densely packed as the stars in the sky. After tens of thousands of years of accumulation and transformation, the Black Sea had formed 5 major sea domains: the Black Water Sea, the Black Wind Sea, the Black Cloud Sea, the Black Fire Sea, and the core sea domain, the Dark Sea. The Dark Sea had the richest resources in the entire oceanic world and the most fortuitous encounters. However, it also had the harshest natural environment in the entire oceanic world. The two words, Black Sea, lived up to its name. The entire sea domain was shrouded in boundless dark clouds all year round. The sky was always dark. No matter how piercing the sunlight was, it could not shine down. There was also a mysterious substance in the air that could affect a cultivator's mind, making them irritable, easily angered, and unable to control their murderous heart. Hence, the cultivators in the Black Sea all had fiery tempers. They were unreasonable, filled with hostility, and the entire sea domain was in chaos. However, it was easy to train experts here. Furthermore, they were all combat experts. When they fought, they would fight to the death. Just think about it. If a cultivator could maintain their original state of mind after living here for a long time and not be affected, just their mental state would surpass the cultivators of the other sea domains. As for the development of the Green Dragon Chamber of Commerce, when Kim Tae-ho talked about it, his eyebrows danced with joy, talking about it without end. His initial capital of 100 million black astral coins had already multiplied to 50 million black astral coins. The momentum was excellent. However, after hearing Xiaochen's introduction of the 1 billion black astral coins in the Dragon's Gate treasure trove, Kim Tae-ho felt a blow to his confidence. Damn it! This fat lord has worked so hard for more than a year, but I still can't compare to you and a girl in 2 or 3 days. However, Xiaochen turned around and smiled. About that, can you give this fat lord some more capital? There are simply too many goods in the Black Sea. Our merchant ships are clearly not enough. Chapter 1139. Xiaochen scolded jokingly, don't even think about it. Not only can I not give you black astral coins, but you can also use the resources that your merchant association earns to fund the construction of Heaven Dragon City. Kim Tae-ho opened his folding fan and said, hee hee. Just joking. To this fat lord, money is just a bunch of numbers. What this fat lord enjoys is the process. These words were not false at all. If Kim Tae-ho craved riches and honor, the wealth he had in the Sky Dome realm was enough for him to enjoy for several lifetimes. Xiaochen said after some thought, I will give you plenty of support as well. You can choose one of the subsidiary islands of Heavenly Star Island and make it an independent trading island for the Green Dragon Chamber of Commerce. As for the merchant ships, after Mo Chen has settled down at Black Flame Island, I will sell all the king-grade warships I refined to your merchant association. When Kim Tae-ho heard this, his eyes immediately sparkled. A smile bloomed on his face as he said, that is very generous. I will make a military pledge as well. Within 3 years, I will make the Green Dragon Chamber of Commerce the top merchant association in the Western Sea. Xiaochen waved his hand and said, there is no need to make this military pledge. I believe in your ability. Our goal is not just the Western Sea but the entire oceanic world. We also want to charge back to the Kunlun continent. We will trample on whoever smashed your signboard in the past, making them remove their own signboards. When Kim Tae-ho heard this, he thought back to how his signboards were smashed. A vicious look flashed in his eyes. When Xiaochen saw this, he frowned slightly and said, something is wrong with you. It seems like you cannot control your murderous heart. Kim Tae-ho nodded and said, after I return from the Black Sea, I need to rest for a month. Otherwise, it will be hard to guarantee that my heart will not change. Aside from the native cultivators, outsiders do not dare to stay in the Black Sea for long. Of course, this does not include some cultivators who want to temper their minds. Xiaochen thought for a moment, then took off the Neptune headscarf from his forehead and handed it to Kim Tae-ho. This is the Neptune headscarf. You can wear it when you go to the Black Sea in the future. It will ensure that your heart will not change. Kim Tae-ho didn't take it. From your tone, it sounds like we're going to the Black Sea soon. You should keep it. Xiaochen said seriously, my mental state has long since reached a state where it is impervious to ripples. The mysterious substance in the Black Sea is unable to affect me. Your cultivation is too far away from mine. Don't force yourself. The Neptune headscarf had endless uses, and Xiaochen quite liked it. However, Kim Tae-ho obviously needed it more than him, so Xiaochen didn't need to hide it. The Green Dragon Chamber of Commerce could develop so fast. The main reason was that De Bao had opened up the Black Sea trade route and put in a lot of effort. In the end, Xiaochen asked where Batu was before letting Kim Tae-ho rest. After Kim Tae-ho left, Xiaochen slowly walked out of the room and arrived at the summit. He looked down and saw millions of workers laying the foundation for the future Heaven Dragon City. It was bustling with activity. Under the arrangements of Mo Chen and Lan Xiaobai, although there were many people, there was not much chaos in commanding them. Even farther away, the Mo clan's people on Black Flame Island were anxiously laying the foundation for the Dragon's Gate's refining pavilion. Yu Chenxi and the others were personally managing the various resource islands. The development of the entire Heavenly Star Island was very orderly. Furthermore, the Azura Emperor, Lan Chaofeng, presided over the islands. Heavenly Star Island's future was bright. I really can't bear to leave, Xiaochen muttered with a nostalgic expression in his eyes. However, no matter what, he had to leave for now. He had to seek his own fortuitous encounter, to find a way to merge his soul with the heavenly seal quickly and smoothly. Xiaochen wanted to fight against heaven. Everyone believed that he, Xiaochen, could not become a martial emperor. They were waiting to see him make a joke of himself, waiting to see how he would fall from the peak 5 years later. All the opponents he had defeated in the past were looking on coldly, waiting for that day to come. Fortuitous encounters could not fall by themselves at home. Xiaochen could only go out and search for them, risking his life in the most dangerous places. Indecisiveness would only lead to chaos. Xiaochen closed his eyes and took 3 deep breaths. When he opened his eyes again, there was no longer any fear or hesitation in them. Xiaochen pushed off the ground and floated down the mountain peak. Then, he started to say goodbye to his old friends. After looking around, Xiaochen finally found Mo Chen. At this moment, Mo Chen's room was filled with piles of sketches and all sorts of books and information. In the somewhat messy room, Mo Chen continued to painstakingly draw her sketches. She did not even notice Xiaochen's arrival. Mo Chen casually raised her head and saw Xiaochen outside. Pleasant surprise flashed in her eyes. She stopped what she was doing and smiled. What's wrong? You finally have time to come to my place. Xiaochen said, make a guess. I'll give you 3 chances. Mo Chen slapped her forehead and smiled bitterly. This time, I really hope that I guessed wrong. However, you will have to leave in the end. Now that Heavenly Star Island is on the right track, you can leave in peace. Xiaochen smiled. Indeed, he could not hide anything from the other party. There was no need for words between the two. After a short silence, Xiaochen said, take care. Then, he turned and left. Don't forget. You promised me that you would personally see me remove my veil, Mo Chen said as tears glistened in her eyes. Xiaochen's body paused slightly. However, he did not turn his head back. He smiled and said, don't worry. I, Xiaochen, never go back on my promises. I will definitely live on and see you personally remove your veil. You are the top beauty of the Cloud Sea domain. If I don't see you, I will not be satisfied even if I die. After saying that, Xiaochen left with large strides. Only his figure remained, slowly disappearing from Mo Chen's hazy vision. What was waiting for Xiaochen in the mysterious Black Sea? Whether he could find the secret method to break through to great perfection of the blue-robed emperor? Everything was unknown. After taking this step, what awaited Xiaochen was a new journey. On the path to Emperor, I dare to fight against the heavens. From Heavenly Star Island to the Black Sea, the first stop was the Blackwater Sea, one of the 6 great sea domains. This sea domain was as large as the entire Western Sea. Riding the Flood Dragon War Chariot, Xiaochen got Ao Jiao to drive the chariot for him as he soared above the clouds. Inside the war chariot, Xiaochen continued to cultivate, not wasting any time. A cold jade prayer mat floated on the soft bed in the war chariot. Xiaochen sat cross-legged on it. 5 different colored lights slowly spun around him. Each clump of light gave off a different feeling. Massacre, death, destruction, despair, and grief, they were all different. That was right. These lights were the 5 thrones that Xiaochen had collected. They contained 5 different high-level states. Ordinary people could be called geniuses as long as they had one state and raised it to a will. With 2, they could move unhindered. With 3, they could be called an absolute genius. However, Xiaochen had 5. If he collected the Pain Throne and the Destruction Throne, he would have 7. There were too many. Xiaochen did not intend to raise all of them to wills. That would waste too much time. Xiaochen intended to wait until he had collected all 7 wills before merging them into the state of cycle. At that time, he would raise the state of cycle to the will of cycle. This was what he needed to do after he became Emperor Wu. As for now, he could not give up on these different states. He snapped his right hand. The roof of the war chariot slowly descended, and Xiaochen sat cross-legged on the prayer mat. The scene before him suddenly opened up, and he looked into the distance. With a thought, the purple lightning talisman that represented the will of thunder sent out 4 beams of light, forming a seemingly invisible, sharp saber. This was the form of Xiaochen's small perfection saber soul. The lightning-attributed energy in the saber soul had not faded yet, crackling with electricity. Xiaochen stretched out his hand, and a strand of saber chi with electricity surrounding it shot out from his fingertip. It was like a bolt of lightning tearing through the sky in the blink of an eye and striking a rank 8 spirit beast 5 kilometers away. The saber chi with the lightning-attributed energy first chopped the spirit beast in half. After that, the lightning-attributed energy exploded, turning the remaining 2 halves of the spirit beast's corpse into charcoal. When the wind blew, the charcoal turned into black powder. This was the additional might of the lightning-attributed energy infused into the saber soul. In the end, the standard of a bladesman's strength was still the saber soul. Pu Ci. Little Yellow Feather, who was on Ao Jiao's back, was not to be outdone. It opened its mouth and spat out a golden flame, directly burning the other rank 8 spirit beast to ashes. Then, it spread its wings and looked at Xiaochen cockily. Be good, Little Yellow Feather. Xiaochen is testing his moves. Don't disturb him, Ao Jiao, who was riding on the deep-sea flood dragon, said with a smile as she rubbed Little Yellow Feather's head. Xiaochen smiled and tossed an astral core to Little Yellow Feather. Then, he started testing his moves. These were all high-ranked states. Although they had not been raised to wills, they were of a higher grade than ordinary flames and ice. Xiaochen planned to merge these different wills with his saber soul. The saber soul would form the massacre saber soul, the destruction saber soul, the despair saber soul, and the death saber soul. When facing different enemies, the saber soul could be chosen accordingly. Sometimes, Xiaochen's strongest lightning saber soul might not be effective against some opponents with startling defenses. However, these other saber souls would catch him off guard. When Xiaochen absorbed the light of the state of death into his sea of consciousness, his mind was immediately filled with all sorts of emotions of death. After a while, Xiaochen adjusted to them. Xiaochen's eyes turned gray, representing death. He flicked out a strand of saber chi from his fingertip. This time, the speed of the saber chi was significantly slower. One could clearly see the trajectory of the saber chi as it tore through the sky. When the saber chi struck a rank 8 spirit beast 5 kilometers away, it did not split it in half. However, when the saber chi penetrated deep into it, the power of death slowly seeped out. The vitality of the spirit beast's body slowly dissipated. A moment later, its withered body fell from the sky. Xiaochen entered deep thought as he muttered, "Its might is much weaker than the lightning saber soul. However, it is also due to the lack of compatibility. After familiarizing myself with it, when I meet some special opponents, I can achieve unexpected results." Following that, Xiaochen tested the might of the various saber souls. Then, he connected them with one another, tempering their compatibility. With the continuous tempering, he could be considered to be cultivating his saber soul. A 40% comprehended saber soul was rather frightening among the blue-robed emperor's saber souls. Most bladesmen could barely raise their saber intent to the level of a saber soul. They could not even condense a physical form.